your guide to the truth. thenewamericanmedia.com.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles, to be specific. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Agree to Disagree here on the TNAM radio network here at thenewamericanmedia.com, where the news always matters. My name's Brian Engelman. I'm your host, as I have been for the 4.5 years of our existence. Yes, I went and moved in with a bunch of hippies in a commune out in Taos, New Mexico, building off-the-grid, self-sustainable homes known as Earthships. And in the shadow of the Sangre de Cristos Mountains, a very sacred site for the Native Americans who've lived there, some people say for the longest amount of time continuously out of any group of people on this continent. I came back from a few weeks out there, right around the time Fukushima hit, and I said, you know what? I think I got it. I think I know what I need to be doing. I was tired of sitting on the sidelines. I was tired of watching what Rachel Maddow and Bill O'Reilly were telling me to think. I found myself yelling at both of them. I just said, enough. It's the age of information where ignorance is a choice. Seriously, if you're going to be stupid in 2016, that's on you. That's just because you're not clicking and taking a few minutes to read up on issues. You're just regurgitating. I actually got into a conversation with somebody the other day who called Donald Trump a racist. And I merely asked, okay, so for what reason are you saying the thing you're saying? And they didn't, they weren't able to communicate that. And I'm not saying Trump is or Trump isn't. None of that even matters. What I'm saying is, if you're going to have an opinion, or as Jim Rome says, have a take. If you're going to have a take, know what you're talking about. And that's why I like our next guest, Justin King. He's doing some good work over at Fifth Column News. You can follow him personally at Justin King News or at Fifth Column News, FIFTA, TH, Fifth. By the way, let's just listen to this drummer for a second. This is Johnny Rabb. He's a drummer at Collective Soul now. He's been our buddy for, 10, 15 years. We recorded this song with him. Love that. Oh, it was really cool. It's fun when you do these things, whether it's you get a fun interview and you get to talk with someone that you've been following for a while, or whether you collaborate on a song. This one was written by Sean Flynn when we were rebuilding Twist of Nothing, the band we moved out here from Ohio to Los Angeles to pursue. Recorded this song with Johnny in mind. Sean passed away in a motorcycle crash. He was our producer, co-host in the early stages 4.5 years ago. God, I can't believe it's been that long. Whew. Man, it's been about 4 years since Sean passed. But anyway, collaborating like that is always fun. It's always fun when you can collaborate musically or when you get to do interviews and whatnot. And really cool thing, Solutions Institute is kind of how I met a lot of these cats that you've heard over the past year or so. And it's fun to collaborate with them as well. Basically an activist consulting firm. Justin was linked up with them over there, and that's how we got to know each other. And some other people we've linked up with over the past few years. We had a chance to meet up with Larry Elder. I guess you'd say libertarian talk show host, the Sage of South Central. He's going to be our guest tomorrow. We met up with him at Politicon a few months ago. Did, some sort of 20, 30-minute thing. It was pretty fun. But I said, yeah, we got to come back and do an entire show and stay focused this time. Actually, our show last time was pretty focused. But there were time constraints. We were calling it Lunch with Larry. Actually, check out the video. It's on youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. Click subscribe. Check out the 4.5 years of content. But it's up there. Made a pretty amazing graphic for Lunch with Larry. Seriously, go check it out. It cracks me up, and if it cracks me up, I know it's at least possibly funny. But we're going to collaborate with him tomorrow. He's going to be our guest at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific. Also on Friday, our guest is going to be Laura Eisenhower, great-granddaughter of President Eisenhower. If you've never heard her, we've known her for a few years at the Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles usually February, I think. It's coming up again. We always go to those, and we've had her on the program before. But yeah, her great-granddad was warning about the military-industrial complex, and we think that's an important thing to talk about. She gets into a lot of the esoteric and the metaphysical, and talks about being recruited into the Mars. What's it called? The Mars, not resettlement plan, but the Mars population plan. There was something about a Mars project. And anyway, I like to ponder the big things. What was going on with my soul before I got incarnated into this body? What happens when I pass away? Is there a God? Is this just an avatar thing where I'm playing a video game and I got to pass these little tests, like I'm playing Zelda or Fallout or something? So I like to think about a lot of those things. I do a sports show called The Unhappy Hour. I do Agree to Disagree, which is this one. And I get into a lot of the more esoteric, bigger questions of what's going on this planet. And when you talk about a shadow government that's actually pulling the puppet strings on basically every government on the globe, you can go Trilateral Commission, you can go through all these different Bilderberg Group, and you can throw 100 names out there. But behind all that, you get into some really interesting conversations about, let's see, well, Star Wars is the biggest movie in the world right now, isn't it? About intergalactic battles and politics. And it's something interesting to look into. I've been following that Ancient Aliens for a long time now. I don't know whether they're on year 7 or year 8, who knows. But anyhow, we're going to talk with Laura Eisenhower this Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific about that and more. So we hope you check all of those things out. Like I said, subscribe, youtube.com/The New American Media, homepage thenewamericanmedia.com, on Twitter at American_media_, and on Facebook do a search for The New American Media. So, without further delay, let's get to Justin King. We're going to talk about movement during prepping, and then cover some of the news.
Hello?
Justin, how you doing, sir? You are live.
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm living the dream. Thank you very much, and welcome back to Agree to Disagree. How's the new year treating you? All 6 days of it.
Pretty good so far. It's been pretty mellow.
Yeah. Well, you are kind of starting things on an ambitious foot, if I do say so myself, and I just did. I'm doing the same as well for pretty much 4.5 years. I've been doing roughly one show a week, mixed in with all the conventions that we cover and all the videos we get there and special events in between. But we're trying to go a show every single day now and ramp things up. It just seems like 2016 might be the last exit we have before we find out the bridge is out and our brakes don't work. It feels that way to me, and I know that you're doing a big campaign right now with Fifth Column News, and you are really trying to up the ante and get some more capital so that you can multiply your efforts. So before we even get into some of the topics, if you would be so kind as to maybe reintroduce yourself to the listeners who missed you on your first appearance on the program, and then kind of explain the projects you've been working on and then your special project.
Okay. Well, I'm Justin King. I'm editor of the Fifth Column. I've written for Anti-Media, Digital Journal. You can find my work in a lot of places. Prior to that, I was military contractor, which will feed into what we will be talking about later. And then the big Fifth Column project is we started the Fifth Column 10 months ago, and we expected it to grow at a certain rate. We've grown a lot faster than that. We had a 5-year plan. We want to start some of the projects that we planned to start 5 years from now. We want to start them now. And these projects include a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week radio station, an internet TV station, and an in-print publishing arm, to name a few.
Yeah, I was reading your. It's not a Kickstarter campaign. Where's it logged off of? It's not Patreon. It's not Kickstarter. Where is it? How does it?
that is directly through our site.
You know, I gotta pick your brain about that, because we've been pondering the Patreon and all that stuff. But anyway, the point was you sent it out last night, and I was clicking, doing a little bit of my research before the show, and I was reading about all the things you're intending to do, and okay, here's the amount we're looking for. If we fall short, we're gonna beef up these areas. Here's what we ultimately want to do, and it's you have some pretty grand plans, but not really, because in a year, you guys have really got your act together. Your organizational abilities over there, I'm impressed. I just got to say I'm impressed. You've been on a show for a while, and we've been chit-chatting for a little bit now, and you're doing good stuff. I don't know how big your team is necessarily, but you're doing a lot of good things, and a little bit of a capital investment at this point to kind of do some micro lending, micro donations, micro crowdfunding. I really think your timing couldn't be better. I think rolling with it right now and saying, guys, we're ahead of schedule. We got a pretty nice blueprint, pretty nice rough draft here. Let's throw some steroids into this and kick it into gear. So, anyway, I took you off track there a little bit though, but you were kind of getting into what you were saying about where the money's going to go, what you're trying to improve, and I want you to get back to that, because I tend to ramble in circles, but I want to get back on the main track whenever possible.
Well, those are the three main things: the internet TV station, the 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week radio station, and then the print arm. But we've got a bunch of other little projects, and for the people that are tuning into this show, one of them is we want to do in-person tradecraft classes around the country. We're doing a pilot program within the next 2 months here in Ohio, where we will actually be teaching a lot of the stuff we talk about on the show. So those are the main projects. And you're right, the sum, it's a huge project, so it's got a huge price tag, or it seems to. We need to raise about $50,000, which is a lot.
It's really nothing. A little background, probably a story you may not be aware of, or maybe tangentially. As a 20-year-old at Bowling Green, where I went to college, I was the concert director. They gave me a budget of $9,785 and said, put on a major show. So as concert director, they sent me to Nashville to learn how these things are put together, and I'm listening at USC. Oh, here's how much we paid Dave Matthews $250,000 to come do this. Oh yeah, this was in our arena with 30,000 people, and I'm sitting here going, you want me to do what with under 10 grand? You got to be kidding. So we were able to raise $40,000 to come up with a total of 50 grand to roll the dice and put 50 grand in on a $100,000 concert. And we booked the MTV tour with Bush opening for Moby, and it was pretty incredible. 50,000 seems like a lot, and it is. It definitely is. But that doesn't mean it's not doable, and that doesn't mean that your $5 isn't going to count, or that your $10 a month contribution, or however you can throw something in. It really does add up, and people can raise that amount of money. It's not as hard as some people would think. So, it sounds like a lot, but it's not. Also,
when we did the math on it, because we saw the number and we're like, wow, that's a lot to ask of our readers. And then we did the math, and basically, if every one of our readers, individual readers for the last 4 or 5 days, gave $2, we'd be overfunded. So we'd have enough readers. So, you're right, the $2, $5, $10 donations, which is how most of it is coming in, it's adding up. We've only been live a couple of days. We've already got 1% of what we need, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it'll steamroll. And I think that as we start bringing more and more of the projects online, we'll get more and more interest in it. So I definitely think it's going to be a success.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that much more than I do, because, like I said, I've been at this for years now. I've always known that this is where I want to be, but trying to make that switch, that balance from this is my hobby, that I want to be something, to you kind of see things grow and you watch your kid take steps, and maybe I pulled that off your Facebook page, but when you watch your kids start taking their first steps, you see a project and you see what it could ultimately become. You really have that vision, and like you said, you had a 5-year plan. We had a 10-year plan, and those are some grand plans, but 4.5 years in, we just kind of said, all right, it's a new year, it's 2016, this election's pretty important, it's now. You know, like no more guessing, no more, well, we'll wait a little bit until things get better, until our team grows, or if we do that. And sometimes you just gotta say, hey, what's going on in this country is important enough where I need to dedicate even more of my time to trying to make sure it works out well. And I think that's kind of at the core of what you do over at Fifth Column as well, is just trying to find a way to make sure that this stuff works out well for we the people. Am I close to being on point with the rationale behind the drive there?
You are 100% on track. And a lot of the projects are actually more to benefit people overseas. You know, we're a global site. You can read our site in 30-something languages now. Problem is, a lot of these countries they have systems to filter out keywords, and they filter out our articles. However, a live radio stream will get through because they don't have a system to do that yet. So a lot of it is to reach people on a global level, people that wouldn't be able to access this information otherwise. And then as far as our motivations, yeah, the team that we have is stellar, and we're all very, very motivated, very dedicated to what we're doing. Otherwise, we never would have made it through the first few months when our paychecks were like $1.90.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't be happier about how it's going. I mean, we're not even a year old yet, and we're really growing. I mean, our readership is half of The Intercept, which is, you know, that he's got Snowden, and we're capturing half of that.
That's like, hey, we got good ratings. We're going up against the Super Bowl over here. That's our target demographic. They're right over here, and look how we did. We did okay.
Yeah, so I'm happy with that, and I think that, you know, within another year, I think we'll be competing on the level we want to be competing at, and we will truly be infiltrating the media to use our branding.
Yeah, and you know, you mentioned Snowden. Our guest tomorrow is Larry Elder, and we had a chance to meet up with him at Politicon, Cenk Uygur, and it was this whole thing. Ann Coulter and a whole bunch of people, a lot on the left, a lot on the right, and we were actually there. The Yes Men introduced Edward Snowden. They were the first ones to announce that he got clemency. They were the first ones to announce that he was on United States soil. The crowd freaked out. They brought him out. And if you're familiar with the Yes Men, they're pranksters. So about 5-10 minutes into their gag, the whole stage was bum rushed. And then Snowden showed up on the big screen, and it was a fake actor who was dressed like him, looked like him, was talking like him, which is typical Yes Men stuff. Do you ever watch Yes Men, Justin?
Oh, yeah. Their stuff with Dow, with what they did with the Dow Corporation, with Bhopal, I loved it. Really
it's
great.
Incredible activism. You know, and you gotta kind of be a bit of an asshole if you're gonna go that route. But in the same token, some of these people ask for it. Some people are doing such bad things, you have to kind of step your game up, step your troll game up a little bit. But anyway, the point of the segment was, here's the number you call. You know, whatever department it specifically was, the clemency department, the whatever it was, and said, look, this feeling you guys just had when you rushed the stage and you were that excited because he's standing up to protect your God-given rights, to protect you from the government doing certain things to you, such as the Fourth Amendment clearly states that basically everything about you is private unless there's very strong evidence that you're a dirtbag. Stay away. This guy is fled to Russia. You know, he's living in a whatever, exiled from his own country for being a patriot. So stand up and call your representatives and start putting some heat on people. And I think that's pretty much one of the most important stories of our day. At least the past 4.5 years, easily. We named him our Man of the Year. It was just that one moment where you were finally able to say, hey guys, here, you see this Snowden guy? Remember that stuff I've been telling you for 10, 15 years, and you always called me names and laughed and nudged your arm and said, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, and where's your tinfoil hat, and all the... See, I was right, and you guys were wrong this whole time. So for me, that was a very important moment.
Yeah, I mean, his revelations are huge. I mean, the impact of it is just astounding. And I think that it created a lot of distrust for the government, which we need. I mean, a healthy distrust of your rulers is paramount to maintaining a free society. So,
yeah, it's a great time to be alive, Justin. You know, I wonder what would Thomas Paine and Ben Franklin be doing right now? What would they be printing? What would their Twitter accounts look like? You know, came up with an all-time Twitter troll team one time, I think, with Alex Freeman, and just thinking about who would be rocking it right now in 2016 with digital media, being able to instantly address an issue, and you have an audience. You are as powerful as flipping on CNN when a plane goes missing. You can send out something with information or disputing something they're trying to spin, and you instantly shut down a false narrative. I mean, it's an amazing time to be alive with social media. Would you tend to agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, somebody like Thomas Paine, I mean, we'd be in the middle of a revolution if he was still alive.
Hey, that's just common sense. Exactly.
Yeah, he doesn't get the credit he should.
Oh, he's always had my credit. Not, you know, I don't know if you're a Glenn Beck fan or if you even need to be, but he kind of rewrote Common Sense a few years ago, and I thought it was fantastic. Just trying to modernize it so that we could understand. You know, meet your new boss, same as your old boss. History repeats itself again. Here we are. You know, and I think people need to be reminded of that from time to time.
I do too. I mean, he's easily one of, maybe not writing style, but as far as my ideology, you know, I grew up reading his stuff, even the stuff that, you know, got him in trouble when it comes to religion. So
yeah,
he's, you know, it's been 200 years, and his thoughts, his ideology and belief system are still, I mean, they're above reproach.
Right. Yeah, I sometimes wonder who's the best out there today. Do you have a best out there today? Who do you look at and go, man, crushing it again, Cheryl Atkinson, crushing it again, Glenn Greenwald? Are there a few names out there of people that you're just going, man, kudos, thumbs up, you know?
You know, it's funny. I tend, like, I don't look at, when I look at people that are doing great, I tend to look at people that don't get the credit they deserve. You know, I mean, there are a bunch of great minds out there that are really pushing it, and in very different directions, not always news. But, you know, there are...
Okay, well, if it's not even news, do you mean culturally, such as even in acting and music and entertainment and sports as well, or are you just sticking with the journalism angle?
Well, I guess it's not, I don't know that it's journalism. It's more philosophy on some of it.
Okay.
Like, there's a guy, Cassius Methel. He writes for the Anti-Media. He's written some stuff for us. He launched his own site recently. It's called Era of Wisdom. It's a little new agey for me, because, you know, I'm old, but I can see how his philosophy is going to impact people if he get the audience he needs.
Right.
And then we've got, you know, there's a Canadian journalist. There's two Canadian journalists, actually, Ben Morris and David Slater. These guys are really good, but for whatever reason, they haven't captured the audience they need.
Right.
And those are the people I tend to notice.
Well, you know, the interesting thing, number one, I said in the intro, we're going to have Laura Eisenhower coming back in. She's very new age, very woo-woo, as some people would say. I mean, we're talking intergalactic, but, you know, with her great-grandfather, President Eisenhower, warning of the military-industrial complex and all the stories of meeting with ETs and all these bases. Anyway, from everything from meditation to exopolitics, that's totally right up Laura's alley on Friday, and this guy from Era of Wisdom, if you want to connect him with me, shoot me a text or something. If this guy's really good at what he does and he's a little out there, that's right up our alley, too.
Definitely.
So please do.
He really is an interesting guy.
Well, then anyway, let me... No, go ahead, if you want to bookend that.
I mean, those are the people that I tend to notice. I'm sure you've probably maybe had Carrie Wedler on. She's based, like, out there with you guys on the left coast.
Mm-hmm. And
she's one of the few, I don't want to say anarchist, but let's just say less government.
Libertarian-minded, neo-structural governmental analysts. How about that?
Right.
Yeah, that thing.
She's one of the few females that made her mark without, how do I put this delicately, without using the fact that she's a female. If you follow me.
You can deliver the news, but if you also happen to be hot, I mean, geez, what was it? I think my buddy Mark Clare from Lions of Liberty. If you guys haven't connected, you need to do his show.
I'm actually going on his show later this week.
Yay! Yeah, it's a small world, man. Perfect. I'm glad you're doing that because I didn't know. Have you been on there before, or is this a first?
I haven't.
Excellent. No, he's one of my good friends. He lives right around the corner out here in Los Angeles. Where the heck was I going with that? Now I'm thinking about my buddy Mark. What was I saying? Oh, but he tweeted something about that Tomi Lahren, that blonde on the Blaze. She used to be with One American News, and I'll say she's doing a great job with her 1 to 2, 3 minute just hammering certain issues and why it's wrong. I think she's doing a great job. I liked her on One American News. But anyway, Mark said, what did he say? Does the Blaze only hire porn stars to read the news or something like that? Just the point being, they're really hot, some of these people, and they're really talented. But the fact that they're attractive to a lot of their audience, it's hard to ignore. It's a little distracting, and it causes some people to wonder, well, are they actually good, or are we rooting for them to be good? You know, and that is a sad reality, but it is out there in a segment of people that wonder that. It's there's not a lot of ugly people in the news, guys or girls. You should see the LA stuff. I don't know if you do, but I mean, we have a guy, Dallas Raines, and I mean, it is just like that classical bright white shining horse teeth, and you know, the perfectly pressed suit, and all the weather girls have 3-inch skirts, and it's like you're watching a softcore porn. Anybody you look at on the news, and anyway, I digress.
I mean, that was kind of the point. I didn't know how far we wanted to take it, but yeah, I mean, she's a very pretty girl, but she doesn't use that, and that was one of the things I was like, wow, you know. I mean, she you never see her, you know, pushing out her chest or anything like that. You know, she focuses on the ideas, and it's something that's always impressed me.
Right. Well, you know, I think in this day and age, I think it's really important that we're grabbing the information from people that we respect, and we are sharing it and multiplying that message out there. And that's kind of why we connected in the first place through Solutions Institute, and that's why we're staying connected now. So let's get into the meat of things that where we were headed with kind of going over movement during prepping, and kind of start to tear this apart, because I think, like you said in your tradecraft section, that, you know, some useful skills right about now. Maybe this is a little more important than the Minnesota Vikings game and how cold it's going to be this weekend. Although I'm very interested, and I'm going to watch. What's really more important? Okay, we know. So we'll get into that in a second, but I wanted to kind of wrap up and make sure where people know the places to link up with you, where they can donate if they want your project to move a little bit more forward, if the, you know, the best sites that you want them to go visit and check out your content. Make sure we get that out to everybody right now, if you would.
Okay, easiest thing to do. Doesn't matter what social media network you're on. Hashtag fund the fifth, and fifth is spelled out. When you go there, you'll see, you know, the memes, because we're going for money Molotovs as a kind of homage to Ron Paul's money bombs. So we've got that. It has. Who
did that graphic, by the way? I gotta ask. Who did the graphic? I love that.
Which one?
Oh, there you go. Perfect. There are multiple. No, the money Molotov. It's a good idea. It's a great idea, and it's a great visual. You know, even if you only have a couple bucks to throw in this little mason jar, let it rip. You know, go.
Right.
Toss the Corona bottle.
The idea for Money Molotov actually came from one of our core readers, Kurt Reaper.
Nice. Well, kudos to you. I like it. Yeah, I'm a fan. So anywhere on social media, they type in Money Malta. What was it? Fund the Fifth. Fund the Fifth.
Fund the Fifth.
Gotcha.
And you'll get an overview of our most influential articles. You'll get an overview of the plan as far as not just the three main projects, but some of the sub-projects, as well as how we plan on accounting and showing you where your money's going, which I think is something that a lot of people miss when they're saying, hey, give us money. We'll basically disclose everything that is spent out of this account down to the last dime. The only thing you're not going to get is a list of donor names and the increments in which the money came in. So, other than that, everything's open.
Excellent. Okay. Well, then let's do that. Fund the Fifth, F-I-F-T-H. When you spell that out, do you end up, instead of saying H, saying th? Do you actually make the sound? Have you found yourself doing that?
I do, actually. Fifth, yes.
I every time I try doing it, now it's like when you hear George Bush say, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, I ain't gonna get fooled again." He totally butchered that. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. He totally butchered it so much that even when I casually try to bring it up, I start playing that routine in my head, and then I screw myself up. And so I think the sound of the TH, I'm saying it so much as I'm trying to just say H and say it as I'm thinking what it sounds like, and I find immense difficulties with it. But once again, as I like to do so much, I digress. So anyway, basically on social media, go to Fund the Fifth, spell it out, I'm not doing it again, and go ahead and help set this thing up with the Fifth Column and Justin King. All right, so you have a background, Justin, in military. I know you briefly touched on it on the intro, but once again, let's talk about this topic with tradecraft, if you will, with movement during prepping. Talk about some of the experiences you had when you were in the military that made you keenly aware of why this topic is important.
Well, one of the things, as a contractor, one of the things I did was we laid out the plan. I was a details guy, quote. And one of the most important things is, how are you going to get out?
Right.
If something goes wrong, how are you going to get out? And back then, we would lay it on in several levels because we had technology that most people aren't going to have in an emergency situation. But then we always laid on contingency plans if everything went wrong, and those are the ones that I think people need to know, because when I've talked to people recently, I found out, I'm like, okay, so what's your plan? Well, we're going to bug out to here. How are you going to get there? And then I get that deer in the headlights look. And I've realized people's current plan is to drive there, like using the roads they normally would.
Yeah, I'm going to hop on the 10 freeway, and I'm going to make it over to San Bernardino. That's my plan. I'm going to hop on the 10 freeway, and I'm going to roll out to San Bernardino. Have you ever been on the 10 at pretty much every hour of the day? Okay, now multiply that by a lot. You ain't going anywhere if you're not on a motorcycle, pal. You might as well get a sailboat and cruise around to the edge of the state, circling the Pacific.
Right, and that's what I've realized is that people haven't taken that into consideration, especially those people that have to cross bridges or something along those lines. Because if it is a national emergency, those will be shut down.
Is it true that I wanted to ask you, but is it true that bridges get stitches?
I'm sorry.
Never mind. Maybe that was a self-indulgence. But Maynard and his band Pussifer, they have a song out, and bitches receive stitches, and I just made a bridges and bridges joke. Anyway, it was really stupid, but it made me chuckle. So anyway, especially if it's involving a bridge, the bridge might not be there. Are you going to rappel down? Do you have an alternative path? Seriously, what's your plan? Plan is what you're asking.
Right, and that's one of the big things that I think a lot of people are missing. You can have all the supplies in the world, and you can have a secure place to go to. But if you can't get from point A to point B, there's going to be an issue. And this was something that I spent a lot of time doing. these routes. And I guess the most effective and the simplest route for people is to establish what's called a corridor. And that is exactly what it sounds like. It's a set latitude or longitude that you're going to travel down. And the reason you do this is because, A, if you get separated, people are going to know where to go to try to link back up. And if some of these, the reason we used them was because we would know where the guys were if something went wrong. And we couldn't find them. We knew that they were going to be, running and trying to escape and evade down this corridor.
And so then you would go back down that exact line, but you would fan out from that center line on the left and the right and go, something happened around this general area. You look on the left, I'll look on the right, but it's somewhere near this line. That's what we were trained to do. That's what you're saying?
Right. And that was, that was the simplest way to do it. And this is no tech. You don't need anything other than a compass to do this. And I think that's how people need to plan. I mean, it's great if you have GPS, but if something happens and that doesn't work, you've got to be prepared to keep moving without the technology.
And let's not even say that there's an electromagnetic pulse from, I don't know, some rogue nation that just detonated a hydrogen bomb, or they didn't. Let's see who we want to believe on that one. In a room full of poker players, who the hell do you believe?
Right.
I guess nobody. You just got to trust your gut. And for me, North Korea's hydrogen bomb, my understanding is it's so powerful you need a nuclear bomb's power to set this one off. Am I close with that, Justin?
From what I've been able to gather so far is that if it's true at all, which I'm not completely convinced it is, it's 10 kilotons, which is not... don't get me wrong, it would cause a lot of devastation, but it's nothing. They're now measured in megatons rather than kilotons, just like kilobyte and megabyte works the same way. So it's not a powerful device. And more importantly, even if they have it, you know what they don't have? A way to get it here. So I'm not terribly concerned.
I've heard a lot about that.
Korea, maybe.
If what? Oh, if you were the next door neighbor, you'd be freaked out.
Right.
Okay. Fair. I've lived in neighborhoods, and if there's a problem a few streets down, well, it's over there. When it starts spilling into your backyard, guess what? Now it's something we got to think about. No, I totally get it. But my point, anyway, when I got sidetracked with that little North Korea thing, what I was saying is, let's not even say that an electromagnetic pulse has knocked out the power supply. Whether it's some sort of EMP from a solar flare, or whether it's a nuclear bomb detonated in the sky over Nebraska, one over, I don't know, Colorado, and one over Virginia or Kentucky or something. Where if, according to some people like William Fortune, that if they're strategically placed, it could basically knock out, 80, 90, 100% of all of our communications instantly. So I'm not even saying that, worst case scenario. I'm saying, say you have your phone and you have your GPS and you've set your locations in advance, and when you're jumping a fence, you take off and, you realize 3 hours later that your phone probably fell out back there. Or you have to run through water and you destroy it. Okay, tough guy, you got a lot of toy. Yeah, your battery's going to... Well, the number one thing I recommend people have is one of those fold-out solar kits. You just they don't take up... It takes up about the space of a tablet. And then you unvelcro it and roll it out, and you hook it to your backpack, and it's charging through the sun wherever you're going. So I recommend that. But yeah, what if you lose your phone, you break your phone, or you run out of juice in your phone? What are all your cool toys going to get you if you don't know how to do this stuff blindfolded? I think is what you're getting at.
Right. That's, even when it comes down to weapons, you can have the Halo sights, the EOTech sights, the laser sights, all of that stuff, and it can all go down. And then you better know how to use those iron sights. So you need to train and practice at the lowest level of technology that you could possibly have. And then all of the other stuff, it just makes it easier.
Right.
But, if something goes wrong, you still know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's very important. What do they say in the military? When you have one, you have none. When you have two, you have one, or something similar.
Right.
If you have one, you have none. Basically, you better have something redundant in case you get in a wrestling match with somebody and you get out of it and you're fine and you somehow escape, but your knife fell off in the fight. Same thing with the cell phone concept. Now what? I got my backup in here. Hang on, let me unzip this because it's in the most secure location I have. Whew, good thing I thought ahead. It's those types of things that you're not going to have time or the resources or the energy to do when you're under stress.
Right.
I get that.
It's really, this is a very simple concept. And the easiest way to do it is you pick a location you know you can get to blindfolded. I mean, it could be a gas station down the street. Something that everybody's going to know is the initial RV point. And then from there, you draw your lines. You're going to walk, due south until you hit this point. And then you're going to turn, and you're going to go this direction. You could actually use simple, just cardinal directions if you don't know how to shoot an azimuth on your compass. So it can be very easy, but these are things you have to consider, because if in any of these situations, getting on the road and just traveling as normal, that's not the best idea. That would be the number one thing, is to come up with a good plan to get from point A to point B.
But you also say get off the road.
Yes, unless you're talking about going thousands of miles, you're going to want to stay off the road as much as possible. At least stay off the main roads. If you're traveling thousands of miles, you want to hit highways, county roads. You don't want to get on the interstate, because those, the reason we have an interstate is to deploy the military. And in an emergency situation, you're not going to be able to get off it.
Yeah. Are you reminding me how woefully inadequate my bug-out plan, in fact, is? Is that what's happening here? My long, dramatic sigh of, all right. Okay, I have an idea. Justin. If it's all right with you, let me take like a quick 60-second break here.
Sure.
Pause for a moment. We'll reset. And when we come back, let's kind of put a plan together. If that's the same thing what you mean about movement during prepping. Are we getting toward that, or are you talking about prepping without other people noticing that you're prepping, the movements to and from, and how you're building your supplies? You're basically talking about how to bug out. Am I understanding correctly?
I'm talking about how to bug out. If you want to get into transparent purchases and stuff like that, we can talk about that too. That's another thing that's pretty critical.
All right, well then let's do both of those. If you want to refill your drink, go ahead and do so. My name is Brian Engelman. My guest today is Justin King with Fifth Column News. Check him out at Justin King News on Twitter or at Fifth Column News. My name is Brian Engelman. This is Agree to Disagree. And I'm going to play a fun little goofy song that my brother wrote called Congas with a Z. It's for our Moon Saloon project that we're still working on. We'll be right back in a second. Aight. All right, everybody, we are back. My name's Brian Engelman. We are talking with Justin King, and what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about basically how to bug out. Let's just say you gotta go. You live where you live, whether you have a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a brother, sister, mother, father, grandpa, grandmother, aunt or uncle, friends. What's the plan? If something were to happen, what's the plan? So Justin, let's build it from the ground up. Okay? Like I guess if you're trying to put a house together, you got to find a piece of property. You got to find something level. You got to clear it out. You got to check if you need any permits. And then you build a ground floor / foundation or basement to get things going. So at the core, what are the first few things people need to make sure that they have under control as step one?
Well, first you need a destination. You need to know where you're going. And then from there, you need to know how it's going to start. Because, when people, it's not always like zombie movies, people aren't always huddled together when this happens. It could, happen when one of your family members or one of the household members is at work. So you have to have a plan to deal with that. Who's going to pick up the kids? That kind of stuff. And once you have those together, you can start building the plan as far as the contents you're going to need to get from point A to point B. And then, you can actually lay out the route.
Okay, so let's pause right there before we get into the route itself. Pick a destination. Let's say you live in the total podunk area. You are secluded, things are quiet, things are calm, things are peaceful, things are serene. I mean, I guess why would someone need to evacuate an area like that? Maybe a wildfire? If a wildfire was quickly approaching, or if there was a huge blizzard or something? Or for what reasons would somebody that's living in a remote space need to bug out?
Well, in a remote space, odds are you're going to want to shelter in place. Which we actually have an article coming out about that very soon. But that's probably going to be your best bet. But yeah, if you have to leave, it's probably going to be a natural disaster of some kind. As far as the doomsday military scenario, stuff like that, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're probably not near anything strategic. You should probably just hang out where you're at.
So then does that ultimately make somewhere remote not near something? Because you could be somewhere remote, but you have a nuclear power plant nearby, or you could be somewhere remote and you have a military base, a very important military base, or a nuclear power plant or something. There's a lot of reasons why remote places could also have something important near them, correct?
Right.
But it's less likely, and you need to check either way.
Exactly. I without disclosing the actual location, I can tell you the place that I plan to go to. It's 50 miles from anything that would even resemble a city, and there is nothing there. Okay, I mean it's as sparsely populated a place as you can find outside of some place like Montana, and that's where I plan on going to. So that would be if I was advising somebody. Yes, you want to avoid any. Nuclear power plant, definitely. Military bases of any significant size. You don't really have to worry about your National Guard armory, but you don't want to be, right up against Fort Bragg.
Right. Oh, it's really cool. The Hoover Dam is in my backyard. Okay.
Right.
Great way to get out in the middle of nowhere, buddy.
sources of electricity. You used to have to worry about communication routes, but most of that's done by satellite now anyway.
Would oil fields qualify in that category? Because it's a very important resource.
Oil fields, maybe even other forms of fossil fuel sources, but those are going to be less important. But they'll be on the list of targets to be seized, but they'll be lower down. Things you might not think about would be something like, let's say you are in the middle of 50 miles of nothing, but 2 miles up the road is the only hospital.
Okay.
That's going to be a target.
Now it's good and it's bad, because if for some reason you fell deathly ill or got injured to the point where you needed immediate assistance or you're dead, guess what? You actually have a facility and you're not so remote that you could break your leg and die because you're going to get gangrene. And it's also important to be near some of these facilities, wouldn't it? Or is that even still just a total no-go zone unless you want to end up in a FEMA camp?
If it was me, I would steer clear of medical facilities, because they're always, the things about them, they always have conference rooms, they have the medical facilities, they normally, real large hospitals have helicopter pads. And if you're looking for a place to set up a command center, especially one that probably wouldn't be bombed, a hospital is going to be at the top of the list. So, we're not talking about, the clinic down the road. We're talking about like a Sacred Heart. We're talking about a large facility. And I think actually a helicopter landing pad would be a good rule of thumb. If they have one of those, it's something that you may want to stay away from.
Yeah. Yeah, see, not too far from where I'm at, there's a big location that has a lot of upside and it has a lot of downside. Basically, it's one of these. If you had to go somewhere and go there now, this is it. Just if you had to get somewhere and you had 30 minutes to do it, if you could do something. But there's a lot of downsides to this location, so it's not even a good one. It's just when you're in the middle of a huge metropolitan area, what the hell are your chances, really? Unless you're on like a motorcycle or you can hop on a boat. How the hell do you even navigate a big city? But I want to get to the big city in a second. I want to swing back to, we covered what if you're out in the middle of nowhere, and you basically said stay there. You win. Good job thinking ahead, guy. What if you're in the suburbs? Is the goal still then just get even more remote, find a place with some supplies, some provisions, maybe some, septic, some power, some water, some food, maybe some supplies, something like that. If you're in the suburbs, basically it's the same thing. Get to a place further out, correct?
Right, because when you plan these, my advice is always to plan for the absolute worst.
Right. And
in the absolute worst, if you're in these suburbs, the people from the city will be traveling through your neighborhood to get out, and you don't want to be there when that happens.
Well, let me ask you about that, because that's an interesting thing you bring up. When does a bug in turn into a bug out? Because a lot of people, like you said, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you hunker down, get comfy, because you're staying there for a little bit. In a lot of these things, if there's a severe weather thing or the power's temporarily out for a few days or something, a big blizzard blows through and knocks out some power lines, and okay, to most people, plan number one is, all right, I'm going to hunker down in place. I'm going to bug in. When do you know that bug in has completed serving its function and now you need to flip the switch to bug out? Is there a simple formula to that, or are there a lot of different variables? Is it as easy as something you can tell me in a bumper sticker, or is it complicated?
It's to me, it's fairly simple. First, it's the type of incident. Some incidents, even though you could hunker in there for a few days, you want to go ahead and move. And those are your huge incidents. Now, as far as a natural, let's say something like Katrina, where it's a natural disaster and you're expecting relief to come fairly quickly, and then it doesn't. Those situations, the second it turns violent, move. The second it turns violent, get out.
Okay, when you say, all right, so let me dig down a little deeper on that. The second it turns violent, Now, does that mean someone has to physically attack you? Do you need to hear a gunshot in your neighborhood? Do you need to see something happen across the street? Like, what are we talking in a big city situation where you might have high rises, you have people down the hallway that you share, or whatever the case may be, however people are living? When it turns violent, please define that more precisely for me.
Let's say we'll stick with Katrina. Let's say you're in, Slidell, an area not actually in New Orleans, but pretty close.
Okay.
And you see what's happening in New Orleans, it's time to move.
So if you're right outside something that gets real bad and it's real close, you go, oh, hell no. I see the dominoes clicking toward me. I'm going to get out of here now. Something that is
right.
Something like in Ferguson, or something in Baltimore, or something. We've seen this in the United States, the Occupy movement, the Tea Party. Tea Party never got violent. Occupy did. Ferguson was violent. Baltimore was violent. Not all of them, of course. But basically, when it gets violent in Ferguson, it's time to go with the in-laws for a few weeks, take the kids and the dog, and get the hell out of Ferguson for a couple of weeks until things calm the hell down. Is that close to getting it right?
Right. And because if you do it then, if you do it before it's at your door, you're actually going to be able to move.
Okay.
If you wait for the threat to be where you're at, then you have to fight your way through it. And you don't want to do that.
No, you don't.
The goal is to stay safe and stay away from everything.
Yeah,
and,
what is it?
Okay.
A confrontation avoided is a confrontation won?
Right. Right. My favorite version of that is, try to look unimportant, then, maybe low on ammo. You want to avoid any type of confrontation if you can. And so let's say you bug out and then, nothing happens. Okay, you're out of tank of gas. It's a whole lot better than the alternative.
Well, even talking about a tank of gas, do people have an extra gas tank in the trunk of their car? Do they have walking shoes when they wear high heels or dress shoes to work? Like you said, what if you get stranded and you're at work and that's 35 minutes away? Now you got to hoof it 14 miles back home. Good luck. Hope you've thought this through and maybe practiced a little bit. Because if you're really out of shape, 14 miles, that's not going to be an easy thing, especially in the middle of chaos, depending on the situation you're avoiding. So, I guess it does make a difference. Katrina, people had days and days and days and days of being told that something was coming. Probably they get lulled into a false sense of security because they've been told this so many times over so many decades. And you just go, whatever. They always say it's the last one, it's going to destroy us. I always stay, I'm always fine. And the one time they're right, and the one time you're wrong could get you killed. Okay, that's one thing.
Right.
Mike Brown, a grand jury's going to say, well, he attacked a cop. He robbed a store. What do you expect? He reached for his gun, and he never had his hands up, and don't shoot. That's all a lie. It never happened, and they want to burn a city anyway. Maybe you could be on edge with everything packed in the back of your car at that point, and as soon as it happens, go, you know what? Jump in. We're out. And you could definitely avoid it at that point. But if you simmer there for a couple days and it just keeps growing and the National Guard shows up and it ratchets up a little bit, you've missed your window of opportunity. I'm still correct, right? I want you to stop me if I'm screwing this up, or give me a pat on the back if I'm getting it right.
No, that all seems perfect.
Okay.
You get out as soon as you can. And yeah, you want to have your stuff pre-packed. You should be able to get in the car and go, 5 minutes. It shouldn't take long. You should already have all of this stuff prepared and be ready to roll. So that's definitely, key to any of this is the quicker you can get mobile and get out, the better off it is. So you definitely want to have all of this stuff prepared in bags, stored, ready to go.
Now these are things when we have a few days' notice. Let's say there's something really let's kind of go through some of the situations, because we keep going back to Katrina, but I want to expand out from Katrina. Katrina's your comfort zone. And I think preparedness and navigating through compass in the dark, that's your comfort zone. So let me pull you out of that for a sec. All right, let's go through some different scenarios. I think we already kind of covered the Mike Brown thing. Like, a grand jury's going to say some stuff. People are upset. Like, you can see the writing on the wall. I think we kind of covered that scenario. What if there is let's say if the power goes out? That's one where people would usually they would probably bug in saying, well, it'll pop back on in 4 hours. But maybe it turns into a day or 4 days or a week or 3 weeks. How long would it take for neighbors who have nothing saved up to start going after their other neighbors to try to get things so their baby can live? I think communities can devolve really quickly in a worst case scenario, especially if they're not prepared, if they hadn't taken the time to get this stuff organized in advance. So if that's a situation, let's go through a power outage. Would you agree that the very first thing you're supposed to do is bug in and ride it out?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to leave every time somebody smacks a telephone pole.
Right.
So in most cases, unless you're aware that power outage was caused by something crazy, yeah, you want to hang out. Now, if it stays more than 24 hours and there's no logical reason for it to stay, now if it was a blizzard or something explainable, that's one thing. But if we're just talking, you're going about your day, the power goes out, you have no idea why, you have no communications with the outside world, and it lasts more than 24 hours, you need to move.
Okay, now because why?
Because that would be a signal of something happening on a national level.
Okay. Now, so let's talk about that. Let's dig a little deeper. If the power goes out and you cannot access your tablet, your Galaxy, your iPhone, your laptop, your desktop, come on, give me some other things that people access. You can't get into Netflix. You can't get, I guess, now we're talking services versus devices, but think of how you consume your information. Your email isn't loading. You can't call your dad. How what would happen on the radio? Would the radio be out right away, Justin? Or do you have to go ham radio or CB radio? How do you still gain communications at this point so that you can get, because information is going to be crucial. Where can people get some gear? Or what items should they get so that if the internet goes down, your cell phone doesn't work and your phone doesn't work, whether it's a landline or a cell phone? Is there any other way to stay connected and get some info?
Well, the more advanced answer is, yeah, you can get a ham radio, something like that, and you'd be able to pull information from all over the world. However, even just your normal radio, okay, radios stay on. It's really hard to knock a radio out, to knock a radio station off the line. You're talking about damage to the antenna, because these guys, they have backup generators.
Right.
They have all of this. It's part of, our coordinated response in case of a nuclear war. It's something we've had for, 50 years. That's why radio stations, if you ever look at most of them, like where the actual tower is, it looks like a bunker. They're all concrete. They're designed to stay online. If all of your radio stations are out, that's a safe indication that there's a problem.
All of your radio stations are out. Now, you can't get Pandora or iHeartRadio or something like that. You can't get the live sports stream for, so you can find out who the Cleveland Browns are going to hire for their next head coach, or if LeBron James' triple-double is as impressive as Larry Bird's from 13 years ago, 23 years ago, who knows, whatever. So you can't get your radio that way. You're just talking some sort of handheld, maybe even preferably something with a solar charger on it, where you can also plug your phone in and get a charge, or you could, you don't need batteries or juice from the wall to power it up. Is that kind of what we're saying is the best option? First best option would be a nice radio, maybe rechargeable with solar panels. Right. Second best, a ham radio.
Right, and then as far as something to use as a barometer is when you leave, get one of those NOAA radios, those that tune directly into the weather. The weather station.
Right.
I can't remember the name of it, but there's a National Weather Service. Oh, the National Weather Service. That's what it's called.
Dun, dun, dun.
So you get one of those that tunes into that. It's not a military organization. but in sense of national emergencies, it falls under that. If that goes offline, you've got a huge issue.
Ah, man, and time would be so important. What if there's a nuclear blast? I mean, I guess is there a way to more quickly identify? I guess then you're saying depending on what gear is still working, you're going to know. So I guess that kind of is answering my question then. So basically, if I'm hearing you right, you bug in if there's an issue. But if it stays off longer than you think it should, okay, you got a problem, you need to go. You should be able to tune into a radio, have some extra batteries on hand just in case, have a few different radios in a few different locations, keep one in your car, keep one on your, in wherever, in your house, in your garage or whatever. As long as the radio's working, you're going to know that the basic infrastructure is up and the people that have the reserve power, they're still able to transmit, and it's not the worst case scenario. But if that stuff goes radio silent, brother, you got a problem, right?
Right. Because, that's part of our, emergency broadcast system. And that's kind of like the last line. If that goes down, we've suffered something catastrophic.
Okay, so we need to pick a location, and it needs to be further away. We've gone through some of these things. All right, destination is done. We don't know how it's going to start. We could all be in different locations. What if someone's at work who picks up the kids, who grabs the dog and the cat carrier and the bug out bag and your survival food and your extra water and your extra gas tank and all those things, right? You want to take the route that's as not densely or sparsely populated as possible. And let's talk about the route. So we say what? We're going to the corner store and we're going to meet there, and if we don't find each other there, do you set time limits and say, hey, within 10 minutes or something, I want you to meet here, and then we all have to, here's our secondary, and we're all going to meet here in 2 days if something goes really wrong? Do you do it like that? How do you time it? When do you know it's time to bounce from one location to the next down that line?
You should have a time frame in place to keep moving, because stopping in a situation like that is you're most vulnerable. You want to keep moving as much as possible. You don't want, some guy to walk by, see you, and say, oh, well, let me go get my buddies because I know they're going to be chilling here. You want to keep moving as much as possible. If you have to meet up, I'm in a lucky situation where even if we're as far apart as possible, under normal circumstances, we're like 5 minutes apart. So, I personally don't have to have a response for that. However, you should have one.
Do you leave locations where, I've always wondered, should you geotag or just say, hey, underneath the route whatever sign, I'm going to bury a box over here. I'm just going to pull over at 2:30 in the morning, dig a real quick hole, throw this box here, cover it up. And if I ever have to, I'm going to come back here and I can at least grab some water, I can get some ammunition, I can get some money. Do you go that far? Is that something people need to think about, or that is so next level? It's that's a graduate level course, and we're trying to teach a freshman course here.
I would say that's an advanced. When you talk about caching stuff and stashing these things around the area, that's next level. It really is. You want to have that stuff on you. If you're at the point where you have surplus to go and hide, yeah, it's something you could do, but that's not something most people are going to be prepared or ready for.
Right. If you put it underneath a landmark or something and you say it's right by this tree and you go, all right, we're going to Grandma's house, kids. It's 2 miles down the road. If anything ever happens to Mommy and Daddy, you go to this location, and if you get hungry along the way, we have a bunch of meal bars. They're in a box. They're right underneath this oak tree at the corner by your school. Okay? Okay. So that's... I know that is probably next level, because this isn't my first conversation I've had about this, so maybe I am more graduate level, but woefully unprepared for some of the basics here. But what about a place where you could meet? Let's take is it a cache or a cache? I've heard it both ways.
It's we've actually talked about this before. It's completely regional.
Hold on, you and I have talked about this before. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So I did it last
It's-
time, and I still don't remember. I still want to hold on to cash, and you want to stick with cachet?
Well, my understanding is that the noun is a cache. The verb is cachet.
Oh, to do it is to cachet, like you would sachet. But you could have a sash, just like you could have a stash. Okay, seriously, now we're just splitting hairs on the goofy semantics
That was
here.
full Dr. Seuss right there.
Red fish, two fish, one fish, blue fish. My lord, what have we devolved into? Okay, so let's take the cachet, or the act of doing a cachet. Man, now you got me stuck on fool me once, fool me twice. Shame on you ain't gonna get fooled again. Okay, so let's take away the supplies. Do you recommend that people say, all right, underneath this tree or behind this bush, there's a little glass bottle, and this is a place with a pen and a piece of paper. If I can find this place, I'm going to get to this place and tell you where I'm going. I'm going to say, hey, Grandma's house isn't there anymore. Sorry, rest in peace. We're actually going over behind the movie theater to our second spot. Meet me there. Do you do things like that where you can leave some sort of, if the phones aren't working, emails don't work, no communication is working, oh, I need to check behind the grocery store because right on the ledge there we leave a thing, and if somebody had a chance to get there, they're going to hit it, they're going to write something and say, hey, meet me here. Is that something next level, or is that something people should do too?
That's something people should be aware of. I mean, as a method of doing it, but it's a redundant system.
Okay.
Because hopefully you've planned out, this is where we're going, this is how we're getting there, okay? And if something goes wrong, this is our secondary location. If you get through that and, you're still separated and you still don't have a place to be, your odds of actually linking up start to decrease dramatically.
Okay. So if you can't get the basics sorted out pretty quickly, something may have gone really, really wrong.
Right, and you can definitely leave notes at your at your primary or your secondary location. So I mean there is that, but again it's a redundant system. But again, by that point, things have gone really bad.
Right. So if they go really bad, we understand that we're going to have to cut a few things short. But let's just then go back and say, to pick this up at the original question there. So let's say you live in the suburbs, something happens. Let's not even worry about what it is if the response is going to change. Just generically, something happens. They're trying to get to a place even more remote, whether that's their aunt's place, whether that's their friends, whether that's their grandparents' farm or something. That's where they're going, and that's what they're doing. If that's the case, what do those people need to know about that process? Like you said, it needs to happen as quickly as possible. But are there pitfalls along the way that they need to pay attention to, like roadblocks, or if they're gangs or marauders? Who knows at what stage they did this. If they did it quick enough, maybe they avoid it. But maybe there's a roadblock put up there right away, and it's choked off.
Okay.
How should somebody react to that?
Okay, well, roadblocks are simple to deal with. Roadblocks focus on the road. Go back a quarter mile, get out of the car, walk 500 yards off into the woods, walk past it, and go. People have an aversion to leaving their vehicle because it's a prized possession. However, it's an asset. It is something to be used until it is useful and then discarded. And then they worry, well, how are we going to get back? How are we going to get quickly mobile again? And the answer to that is, laws are silent in the time of war.
Wait, what was that? What was that quote? Walls are silent?
Laws are silent.
Oh, laws are silent. Yeah. Okay.
If you need a vehicle in this type of situation, you can probably get one. It may not be a legal way to do it, but I can promise you that nobody was prosecuted for Grand Theft Auto after Hurricane Katrina.
Well, and wasn't that what they were doing in Jade Helm? They were practicing, we're going to drop you in the middle of nowhere. How are you going to hotwire cars without people noticing?
Yep. Yeah.
I'm glad our leaders are training on our property to figure out how to handle these situations. I'm so glad we're focused inward instead of outward. I'm so glad we the people are the bad guys and that they're planning something bad. Do you feel that they're planning something bad against us? Now I'm taking you 500 yards off to get around a roadblock here, metaphorically, but do you think we're at that point?
I think that training was a large-scale SEER exercise to represent something overseas. That's honestly what I think it was. I don't think there was any ill intent there.
Hey, I would like to believe that. That'd be great. And I'm not saying I completely buy the full-scale opposite of that. You know, I'm not saying it. I don't know, so I'm holding out final judgment, I guess. And I like asking some of these questions on things I haven't completely made a final determination about, I guess. I guess I'm just always careful and cautious that it could happen, so I worry about it happening just in case.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it could. But, I mean, from what I saw in the map and all of that stuff, I mean, even the labels on it, it was a SEER exercise. It was a huge one. It's the biggest one I've ever seen, but not by...
Wait, are you calling it fear? What are you calling it? What exercise? SEER, survival, escape, or survival, evasion, resistance, escape. And the way it works is, you know, there's an inciting incident, like you're training a SEAL team, and they go into a location, and then all of a sudden, all of their equipment is gone, and they have to E&E. They have to escape and evade and get out. Right.
And that's what they were training for. I mean, they've done it before. They've done them in Florida. They've done them in North Carolina. They've done multi-state ones, but they were normally down a very specific corridor, you know?
Right.
They were actually practicing using exactly what I'm talking about.
This was so vague, and it was so... I mean, it's just coming at a time where nobody... Find me somebody that trusts both George Bush and Barack Obama. Is there a single person on this planet that can raise their hand and say, you know, I trust both of those men. I think they're both on the up and up. You know, there's a lot of people that go, oh, well, he's my guy, so I support him. No, well, the other guy's bad because he has a bad view of this thing. But find me the people that are totally cool and comfortable and trusting that our government has our best intentions in mind for us. That number has been decreasing rapidly. I just saw a report, Justin, I don't know if you saw it, that it said, I forget who did the poll or the study, but it just came out saying that Americans' number one fear now is what? I'm gonna put
government. I'm sure
it is. It's government. Yes, I did my John Stockton to throw you an alley-oop. I was hoping Karl Malone could slam it home for two. But yeah, most people now, the number one fear is our own representatives, which is just through the looking glass. It's frightening. It's scary. It's something that should keep any intelligent person awake at night about. And you know, it's just hard when you hear about exercises and you don't trust a thing. Okay, what is Jade Helm really about? Well, it's just an exercise to do. But what's it really about? So once they've lost our trust, and I think they've lost our trust from back to the Kennedy assassination. You know, I mean, seriously, you're gonna off the president to send a message, and you think we're just gonna cower like sheep? No. We just realized that there's a wolf inside the property now. And we need to be aware. And I really think they've miscalculated. I really think the leaders of this planet have miscalculated on this. Are you more optimistic, or are you more ready to ride out an enormous hurricane that you feel coming your way? Or is it a combination of both?
I would like to believe that this could change without massive violence. I would like to believe that. I don't.
Right.
Hope for the best and hope for the worst.
Well, what did Homer Simpson say? He says, communism works in theory. In theory. And it's like, yes, I would love to fix all this stuff peacefully. I would love to. But in your heart of hearts, you think that the military-industrial complex and the unseen hand might have actually pushed this to the precipice. I had to slow down there to not screw that one up. But you think the dominoes are all lined up, and maybe they've been clacking for a few minutes. We just haven't heard them yet. Do you feel it's kind of that close?
Right. I don't even necessarily know that I believe there's some grand conspiracy. I think it is more greedy rich people making deals with greedy rich people to make greedy rich people richer. That's really what I think it is the people in power are trying to consolidate power. And I think they're going to hit a point where enough is enough. And once that happens, I do believe we're in for an insurrection in those countries. We're closer to it. If you look at historical models, we're really at the stage where we need an inciting incident and then a crackdown. And then we're in a full-blown insurrection.
I feel like Occupy was almost there. I feel like Baltimore was almost there. I feel like Ferguson was almost there. I traveled out to Bundy Ranch with Blake Wally, who's actually going to be hitting the road and covering a whole bunch of things. Maybe we'll get him up in Oregon and then to Iowa for the elections. But Blake Wally, we went out to Bundy Ranch, and I mean, they're showing where the helicopters are flying over and shooting their cattle, where the snipers are at up in the mountain ranges. They're showing where the bulldozers were coming through. And I mean, it was one hair trigger pull away from a Crispus Attucks moment. You've covered a lot of this. Did you go to some of these locations? I'm trying to remember. I feel like you went to Ferguson, but I gotta ask.
Yeah, I was in Ferguson.
Okay.
I've been at quite a few of them. I didn't go to Bundy. I tend to stay east of the Mississippi. But yeah, any of these incidents could spark it, because especially with the habit now of solidarity protests occurring in other cities, it increases that potential exponentially. Because let's just say, while Ferguson is going on, we'll use that for an example. Well, Ferguson's happening, okay? City's in flames. There's a solidarity protest in LA. Cops get a little nervous. They tell, everybody to go home. They don't go home. Some idiot has a load of buckshot instead of a beanbag inside of his shotgun. Boom. That's it. Now you've got two riots.
Somebody throws a Molotov cocktail that hits 3 cops at once, and the triggers are pulled immediately.
Right. I mean, it could be any of that, and once it sparks, it spreads. I mean, that is the historical model.
And that's why we went out there. We wanted to be out there. We saw the Pete Santilli video, and I know he's up there in Oregon right now. We went out there and we interviewed him. Why were you here? What did you see? How did you get this video? Talked to some members of the Bundy family, the woman that was thrown to the ground with those the German Shepherds and the tasers. We interviewed her. We interviewed one of the other brothers, not named Ammon, not named Cliven, the father, or the grandfather, as it were. But we just saw this happening and said, whoa, oh my God. This is not going to end well. And we got out there immediately and we just started trying to get the story, trying to add a few extra people there. And we saw a massive gathering of people saying, no, we don't need to see a massacre here. We're actually not going to tolerate a massacre here. You know what? In fact, we're going to go take our property back, and you're going to back up the way you came. We'd like an apology. You're not going to give us one. But we're going to go get our stuff back, and we're going to walk away. And all of our friends are aiming guns at your friends who are aiming guns at us. So it's up to you how you want it. And I'll tell you what, man, when you get there and you know where the snipers are at, and you know what's been going on, and you've seen the video, and you're there, I'm telling you, it's Bundy Ranch is one of the more unsettling things I've had to participate in my life. I felt like I needed to do it, yet I hated doing it at the same time. I knew how close we were to something really, really being set off. Just that first match lit near the can of gasoline. I knew that it just had to catch the right fume, and it was going to suck back in and then launch the whole bucket. I'm saying this to you. I'm not trying to one-up you, because Ferguson was, in some ways, way worse. You were right in the middle of, well, not worse or better. I mean, it's not about that. But what was tell me your experience in in Ferguson real quick, because when we talk about this theoretically, a lot of the listeners, maybe they didn't go to Bundy Ranch, maybe they didn't go to Ferguson. Paint your picture of what it was like walking into the middle of a potential war zone.
Well, Ferguson was unique because it was a situation in which law enforcement triggered the second round. There were the riots immediately after the shooting, and then there were the riots at the indictment, or the failure to indict. Law enforcement triggered that. Basically what happened was they had a great plan, and they had everybody kind of kevelled and boxed in there where the announcement was going to be made, because they expected them to riot right then. And they had everything ready, tear gas ready to go, and they were going to push them all back up into the neighborhoods and get them out of the area. It was a genius plan. Problem is, no plan survives first contact. Nobody rioted right then. They started a peaceful march. And then, whatever happened to this day, I still don't know. Law enforcement opened fire with tear gas. And when that happened, that's when the riot started. I mean, that's probably the biggest secret about that second round in Ferguson, was that it wasn't, well, we're not going to indict, and then they started setting stuff on fire. That's not what happened. They started with a peaceful march, and law enforcement triggered the reaction. And then once everything had calmed down, when we walked through the affected area, a couple of things that I noticed were law enforcement tended to target people that were alone or in small groups and that did not look like they were ready to engage them. We walked through, the entire route of everything that was burned. And, I was with some gentlemen that definitely gave off the "you will not screw with us" vibe. Okay? Everybody was masked up. Everybody had backpacked, some body armor. This was
people that were ready to rock and roll in case of a worst case scenario, and they might not have had any idea that they needed to grab that out of their trunk that day, but it was sitting there ready just in case.
Right, and
that makes a difference. That makes a big difference. And people say, "Yeah, let's get off the grid. Let's go out to the middle of nowhere." But a lot of research and a lot of common sense stuff will tell you, if you're in a big group, if you're in a nice clan, a nice gang, a nice cluster of people, it's a lot less likely 20 rough-looking, prepared people are going to get messed with, as opposed to being like the lone sheep wandering off by the brookside by themselves, left the company of their herd, when in came the XYZ and eats it.
Right. We walked right through areas that were closed and did not have a word said to us, because and the police were right in the assumption. The people that I was with, they were looking for a reason.
Right. Right. Like, you didn't wake me up out of bed at 3:30 in the morning to come out here and not crack a skull or two. I am pissed at you guys. You give me one freaking reason why I need to make this my business, and it's going to be my business. No, I can understand that. People are people. I can totally understand that. And so I guess then what you're saying as a piece of advice is, don't allow yourself to get separated from the herd, and try to keep some sort of pack mentality so that you're less likely to get messed with easily. Would you say that's a fair assumption, to kind of take a pull away a piece of information from Ferguson?
Oh, definitely. That, and then there was also the fact that we had, when we were wandering around, it was definitely the singular people getting picked on. But real quickly was that, for lack of a better word, civilians.
Wait, hold on. Your phone was getting a little weird there. Say that again.
For lack of a better word, civilians, people that were not involved in the protests or the rioting or on the opposite side of the spectrum.
Oh, okay.
They were gone. Okay? If you were out on the street that night, you were there as a combatant, for lack of a better term. You were there to be involved.
Kind of ready to fight. Kind of ready to God almighty. That's exactly what Bundy Ranch was, man. It was, there were so many Oath Keepers and militia members there, and you had the cable crews, and you had the interviews, but I mean, I'll just never forget when they were pointing where the helicopters, okay, so the helicopters went over this, you know, and they were pointing off in the distance, a big open expanse out in the middle of kind of nowhere, about an hour outside of Vegas, and, yeah, they're flying their helicopters here, and they were just shooting the cattle for fun. Then they brought the bulldozer in over on that road, and then they dug a mass grave and just dumped all the cattle in on our own property. And then they had their snipers up on that mountain, and they turned up on that mountain, and this is where the cars came through, and here's where the confrontation happened with the dogs and the taser, and you're just like, oh my God. And the people showed up at the Bundy Ranch ready to fight. I'll never forget, it was the iconic picture from Bundy Ranch. It was that one militia member up on top of it was some sort of bridge or overpass, and he had whatever rifle he had, the barrel was right in between two pieces of those concrete barriers to keep you from flying over a bridge. And he was sitting there prostrate on his stomach, just sprawled out. He had just aimed and ready. He had somebody in his sights for God knows how long, and someone took a picture next to a woman in her fanny pack, you know, probably going to see Hoover Dam or Wayne Newton over at the Palms or something. And I mean, it was such a stark contrast to walk in and go, these people here are ready to fight and die if they have to, and they're the fact that they're here, that's all you need to know, that they're ready to kill or be killed, because it's gotten that intense here. They ran because they feel like someone needs defended. And maybe we all need defended as human beings, and that's why we're here. If you do this to one of us, you do this to all of us. I can even understand that. But being in the middle of it, it was... that's certainly something, like you said, if you're trying to bug out of a city or a suburb, you do not want to find yourself in the middle of a situation where you have to get through these kind of roadblocks and these types of situations when your buildings are burning. You kind of want to already be out of here by now. Is it fair to say?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that, even hearing the descriptions, if people haven't been in a situation like that, you know, where they're walking down the street and they're stepping on broken glass, and the building beside them is on fire, and there's a cop pointing a shotgun at them, they're not going to. You can't really understand it.
Right.
It's like trying to describe combat to somebody. You can't do it. So, but the one thing that people should be able to at least grasp from it is you don't want to be there. You don't want to be there. People that put themselves in those situations, myself included, we're a little dumb. I mean, it's not something that.
I took a lot of grief. I took a lot of grief from my loved ones about that decision. I took a lot of grief, and I bounced it off them. For several hours, I was reaching out to several key people in my life and just telling them, and man, people were not happy to hear how dumb I was sounding, that I need to go involve myself in some cattle thing and potentially get my head blown off over what. And I couldn't defend it because they were right. And I go, I don't know. I got this disease. It's called journalism. I don't know what I just want to keep telling stories, and I get myself in the middle of all this shit. I don't know why it's happening, but it is what it is. And maybe it's a disease. Is it possible, Justin, that journalism is a disease that people can catch?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a form of a mental disorder. Because there's no sane person that does that. I mean, that's not normal behavior. Most people don't want to do that, and that's not a egotistical. I'm blowing myself up. I'm saying no, I'm not the smartest guy for wanting to do that.
But we're smart enough to know how. But we're smart enough to know how dumb the decision is.
Right. And my logic on that is, I stand a better chance of being able to bring a real story out than, somebody that hasn't been in those situations before. So that's how I justify it to myself.
For the greater good, from the what is it,
right.
from the haves of the many, what is it, to the, what was that communist manifesto? From the talents of the many to the needs of the few. Whatever, who cares? I don't even want to
From
remember.
each according to their ability, to each according to their need, something along those lines.
From their ability to their need. Yeah, once again, it's one of those things that have been paraphrased so many times. Okay, I got a good one. Give me a good historical quote. Give me something that speaks to you. If I say that, what comes to mind?
If you say what?
If I say, give me a great historical quote. Just something from a founding father or some a luminary.
Our only weapon is our refusal.
From?
Our only. That's Michael Collins.
Michael Collins.
He was an Irish freedom fighter, terrorist, whatever you want to call him.
Well, that's the book Angels and Demons with Dan Brown. Well, the conquering angels of my forces are seen as the devouring demons from the other side. Angels and demons are the same thing, depending on who's writing the story. And I think it's an interesting point. I just can't help it throughout this conversation being reminded of Thomas Jefferson. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time by the blood of patriots and tyrants. And I really don't want to have to do that. I really don't want to have to go through that. I feel like Mel Gibson in the beginning of Patriot. I feel like a big wimp because I'm not as tough of the crew as the people around me. They're talking tough. Maybe they're doing some things. Maybe they're trying to get me involved. I'm like, no. This is the last thing I want. I do not want to be within. Just no way. Oh yeah, but you know what you've done in the past. Right. That's kind of why I don't want to do it again. And I'm talking to you who's done military contracting. There's nothing you've seen or done that's going to... Anyway, you've seen and done it all is what I'm getting at. But, I think it's the last thing I want, but I think it's also important that we need to be prepared just in case. Just like if we have to bug out for a flood, for a tornado, for an earthquake, from an EMP, from an attack, whatever, a wildfire approaching, whatever's happening, we should probably be prepared for it. And even though, similarly, like I don't want any sort of armed conflict, I want to be prepared as much as humanly possible so that if the worst case scenario does occur, I'm not going to be running in circles like a chicken with my head cut off. I can protect the people I love, the people around me, have a plan, and remain safe. Maybe I'm doing this from a selfish place, but I'm also doing it trying to wake the neighbors up and saying, hey guys, I think this is pretty important here. I'll sit down and I'll explain as much as I can to you if you want to listen. I think it's important for these reasons, and I God forbid it ever happens. I want you guys to thrive and not be in a bad spot. Do you find a lot of people either get it or don't, or do you actually find that you have a decent batting average as far as talking to people that totally don't get it, and by the end they're like on board and you can see them taking strides to get things under control as far as being prepared for their family, their loved ones, themselves?
Well, what I've actually noticed is you have the conversation with somebody and they blow you off. And then, completely unrelated to you, okay, 6 weeks later a news story happens and they see something that triggers what you told them. And then they start making preparations. Like initially when you first have the conversation, people, they either don't want to know or they cast you off as some loony or whatever. But then they see something that speaks to them. It's that old adage, the truth is never told, it's realized. And, you just give them the information they need to realize it. And then wait, and eventually something will happen. I mean, that's what I've tended to notice. There are very few people when I've been like, you need to get prepared. And they're like, okay, and they actually do.
Okay, you totally busted me. All right, here's $375. What do I have to do? Okay, I'm in. No, I don't think it usually works that way. You're very right. A lot of people, and I have a psychology background, and it was unfortunate. I volunteered at this crisis center as part of getting my degree, and I will go as quickly as possible here, but Without boring anybody with the details, the woman was being abused in horrendous ways. She had young children. She was living with this guy. She had no safe place. She had no money. She had no food, no clothing. If she left the person abusing her and her kids, her life would be up in smoke. And our job there, working at this 24-hour crisis center, was to be a resource so that you could help. And so, an hour and a half of listening to all these things and questions being asked, I was learning, so I was kind of the assistant. It was pretty much sit here, say a couple things if you absolutely have to, but for the most part, shut the hell up and just absorb what's happening. You're allowed to dance into this mix a little bit, but let me handle it, and you're here to learn. And anyway, it was grueling, excruciating, and she left, and I asked the person, I just said, "Man, you deal with this a lot?" And she goes, "Yeah, this is her 25th time in here." I didn't mean that. I thought I was trying to ask, probably more along the lines of, "Oh my God, this was some of the worst stuff I've ever had to subject myself to, and that was just listening to it, and she's living it." I couldn't even imagine. Is this something you have to do every day? But she took it as, yeah, it's her 25th time in here. And I just got so depressed by that, Justin. I just said, you know what, if something I do, and what we did in there, we said, hey, here's your safe house, here's your food pantry, here's your clothing, we have a job, we have a temporary cell phone already set up, we can get your numbers ported in, we can do, it was basically everything you could imagine for this woman to grab her kids and go to safety. We got a safe spot, it has 24-hour security, nobody's getting past the front door unless they know you, nobody's going to know you're here, we'll protect you, we'll help you rebuild your life. She's like, all right, let me think about it. And what are you thinking about, lady? What are you thinking about? We gave you everything. Yeah, it's like her 25th time. And for me, I get that some people need to be told a 21st or 26th time. I do understand that. But for me, that didn't work for me. I wanted to write an article or do a show and get instant feedback. I want an angry letter to the editor about how bad I screwed something up. I want instant impact to know somebody heard what I said, read what I wrote, and it made them think, and they had to react in a certain way, and I got to hear it. It was so frustrating volunteering there. And, I've definitely had several people in my life that I get frustrated trying to explain the importance of putting a good plan together. Has there been a particular piece of wisdom or a tactic that you've used when people very close to you aren't really on board with this, and you don't want to get angry with them, but you also want to still get through to them at a future date? Have there been any tips that you've learned over the years to kind of stay patient and try to accomplish it with a longer term goal instead of getting too frustrated up front and giving up?
Zombie movies and horror movies.
Okay, what are your favorites?
It doesn't really matter. You throw one of those in, and throughout it, you have the conversation. Now, what you've done, without them ever even realizing it, you've made them think about it. And they sit there and they think about how to survive. If you can survive, the uprising of the dead, you can probably weather a hurricane all right. So you get them to think about it, and it puts that seed in their mind, and at the very least, you've given them a basis for which to operate from if something goes wrong.
Wow. Maybe I'll have to incorporate that. Man, I'm going to write this down. Watch zombie movie. Okay, watch zombie movie. That's actually not a bad idea. I mean, I've grown up watching stuff like The Stand, Stephen King's apocalyptic 3-part or 4-part miniseries, whatever it was, which was terrible compared to the book. Don't get me started. But, Hunger Games does something to some people. A lot of these series, Star Wars, The Ultimate Battle of Good and Evil, it resonates with people in different ways. Maybe that is, at the core, the main story that humanity's been trying to tell each other since the beginning of time. Just warnings of don't let stuff get too bad, or else everything gets way, way, way worse, and it is so hard to undo it. Freedom really is a pretty rare commodity in the history of the world, as far as what I've been able to study.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's not, this level of the level of freedom we enjoyed pre 9/11. Because we still have the illusion of it, but it's not really there. It was unheard of. You're not going to find another point in history where people were that free. Now we're under surveillance. We moved from something that's in your face, as it used to be with, the dictatorships of the past, to something that's very soft. You self-censor yourself because the NSA's listening. And it's a different kind of totalitarianism. But
that's a very good point. That is a very, very, very good point. When you have to censor yourself because everything you say and do is being recorded to be used against you at a future date in a court of law, that's soft tyranny. That's a legitimate thing. That is a very legitimate thing. And some people, whatever. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't bother me. You want to shake these people, at the best. And it gets a little tiring, I guess. Trying to, it almost, I don't know. Some people complain about the welfare state, and it's like you can legitimately look at some people that are disabled, or they're mentally disabled, or they're in just a horrible situation, and it's really tough to get out of. But there are so many people. I don't know what percentage, but it's a significant percentage of people that have found a way to game a system, to scam just a setup, and you see it in certain stories from time to time, in certain videos where people lash out a certain way or celebrate getting on welfare, like I saw a week or two ago. It gets tiring working so hard to help out people that either don't appreciate it, don't understand it, or in fact they're laughing while they watch us work that hard. Maybe it's a welfare thing, and the fact that I'm so libertarian / conservative fiscally that I don't like seeing those things happen. But it's kind of the same way with prepping. It's hard to talk to people when they don't want to hear it, when it's so important to their life, and they don't have the time for it.
Yeah, well, I think another tactic that you could use is most people our age remember Sarajevo, remember the Bosnian conflict, and I remember how horrible that was. If you show them pictures of what Sarajevo looked like or Zagreb looked like 3 months before that, it tends to resonate, because this was a tourist destination, and then all of a sudden there was genocide, and it shows how quickly things can devolve. And not to put too fine a point on it, but it's not Africa, it's not the Middle East, it's a bunch of white people, and that there's always this belief that this stuff only happens in the third world. This was a tourist destination of Europe that had mass graves. I think that's a location and a historical example, a modern historical example you can point to and say, yes, it can happen here. I promise you that the people in Sarajevo, in Kosovo, 6 months before this happened, had no clue this was on the horizon.
Man.
And that is one of those catastrophic events that we're talking about that people think is just impossible. But it's very possible. It's happened before. It will happen again. And on a long enough timeline, it will happen here. So.
And they call those black swan events, like at least in the financial markets. Almost unforeseen, these moments that just. I was reading an article about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Sorry to bore you with basketball, but I do a sports show called The Unhappy Hour as well. But the Cleveland Cavaliers last year traded for both Iman Shumpert and J.R. Smith from the struggling New York Knicks last year. And they're saying this is the 1-year anniversary of that trade that got rid of Dion Waiters, who was a cancer to the team for the Cavaliers, in a 3-way trade, and we got these guys back. And when they look at last year, the Cavs were 19-20. They were not even a 500 team at the point when this clicked. It was against the Los Angeles Lakers, and then they went on to have the best record in the NBA from that point. Something clicked. There was that moment in time where it's just the before and after moment. And when it comes to before and after moments, some people can identify the moment that they woke up, the moment that they realized something had changed, something is going different. But like you said, in Bosnia, Sarajevo, is it possible the stock market could just absolutely crumble to pieces? And could it happen quick within a couple days like we saw in 2007, like a black swan event? Kind of a line where you say, hey, before the crash and after the crash, before the J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert trade and after the trade. Your point, if I'm hearing you correctly, these things, they happen. They just happen, and you better be flexible, you better be ready, and you better have a very concrete plan in place so that you can be one of the first people to get out of there before things get really bad. To kind of put a bookend on it. How close am I?
That's pretty much it, and there's actually a specific incident. In fact, if you want to read about it, the title of the article is Million Bones in Washington, D.C., and it covers a specific incident. It's on the Fifth Column News. It covers a specific incident in Bosnia where basically they had the opportunity to get out, and they didn't. And it shows what could happen. And there were UN peacekeepers in the city, and it didn't matter. There were mass executions. There were roving rape vans. I mean, it's honestly one of the most difficult articles I ever researched because I got the testimony and I was dumb enough to actually read it. It's the level of inhumanity that was shown is something that we haven't seen in the modern world. We at least like to think that we haven't seen. But this was something that happened in a tourist town. This was a prosperous area. And, a year before, you'd be hanging out on the beach sipping margaritas, just relaxing. And then the next thing you know, there's genocide. And it's so bad that the UN peacekeepers gave up their weapons and just kind of let it happen because they couldn't do anything.
The events in Bosnia need to serve as a reminder to the world that no country, ethnicity, or religion is beyond the reach of genocide. This sort of thing could easily happen in the United States. It is happening all over the world as you read this. To firmly destroy every stereotype about genocide. This happened 20 years ago in an economically viable, predominantly white country in Europe, and the perpetrators were Christian. It's not ancient history. It's not poor people. It's not brown people. It's not in Africa. It's not a backwards religion. These acts are the child of blind nationalism and obedience. From your site, from this article.
Yeah, actually, when you read the first line, I was like, wow, that sounds like what I opened with. I didn't realize you were actually reading the article.
Yeah, check out thefifthcolumnnews.com to find that story. I was looking it up as you said that, and I will raise my hand and admit that is a story I could do more research on, and that's why I pulled it up. I want to, at the risk of thoroughly depressing myself, I do want to read this, and I will read it after the show. But basically, the point that we're getting at, folks, is it could happen here. It has happened here. It's had it happen all on the globe. We went crazy in World War II and threw a bunch of Japanese people, throw the slant-eyed people behind bars. For what? Because they look like that. While it makes sense, I don't know if you'd agree or disagree, but I'm not even going to get into the border fence. But as far as running a country, it just makes sense to know who's coming and going. If there's a cover charge, everybody should pay it, figure it out. I don't know, whatever. But the thing we need to safeguard ourselves against is, like you said in that, or actually, who wrote this article? I don't see the author. Was that you?
Oh, yeah, that was it.
Yeah, I don't see your sorry, I was scrolling through here. I didn't see your tagline.
It's way down at the bottom now. We had a little bit of site change.
What?
You know.
We need to do a fundraiser so we can get that. Oh, no, it says about Justin King. At least on the right, it'll say that. But anyway, the point is it could happen here, and you better be flexible and you better be ready to flow like water to the path of least resistance and get to safety. Get the heck out of Dodge if craziness breaks out. It's very true. A lot of people in 2016 are completely complacent and just unprepared. Complacent and unprepared. That is a dangerous duo, to be complacent and unprepared, because those people are the ones, would you say, who do they become more dangerous or do they become more of a burden? The people that are complacent and unprepared when stuff like this hits, are they more of a burden or are they more dangerous?
Well, that depends on your level of training. They can either be an asset in the sense of it's a place to get food and weapons, or they could be very dangerous because they're unpredictable. Untrained people do one thing really well in combat, and that's die. So you've got to, what you want to do is that old adage about the guy putting on the sneakers to run from the bear. You're never going to outrun that bear. I don't have to outrun the bear. I have to outrun you.
I love that one. That is so good.
When you're doing this, that needs to be your mentality. Even though it's a horrible mentality to have,
Yeah.
That's the one you need to adopt. You just need to be better than the next guy. And so the apathetic, complacent, untrained, unprepared people, if they're better than you, they're going to be a problem. If they're not, they're a ready source of supplies.
It depends on your level of training. Yeah, folks, look, I don't know if I have a little bit of this from playing football. I know I do from playing football. I never served. I'm not trying to even go along that route. But I have a little bit of this thing where it's like when you're in battle with somebody, and in football it was hand-to-hand physical combat. And you had maybe 2 series to break the person. You had 2 series to destroy him. Just break them mentally or physically or both. And then for the rest of the game, you had them. You kind of had to establish who you were. But yeah, when it really comes down to brass tacks, if it ever did hit the fan, you're a walking bag of supplies. I love the gray man concept of how well you can blend in. Like you said, don't look too important. They might be low on ammo. It's a great. It sounds like that's something that Kurt Cobain wrote on a Bleach album, off the Bleach album, like one of the songs. Don't look too important. They might be low on ammo. It'd make a great song lyric. But it's the truth, and I feel like we could talk about this. You want to start that 24-hour news network, the radio network rather, at Fifth Column. I feel like we could go 24 hours straight just talking about prepping, but we do need to wrap this one up. So, I mean, out of all the things we've covered, what are the big pieces that we haven't had a chance to get to yet?
I think everybody should Google these phrases, okay? Light discipline, noise discipline, and litter discipline, okay? Google those phrases. And learn what they mean. Because when you're moving, those are going to be the most important things to keep in mind to keep you and your family safe.
Now, did I hear that right? Did you say light, litter, noise? Did I miss one?
Yeah, light, litter, and noise discipline.
Okay, go through them. Break them down. Tell us about light. Tell us about litter. Tell us about noise.
Okay, the safest time to move when you're talking about conflict is at night. Now, if you're moving at night, however, you've got a very, very shiny necklace on, it's even worse because it draws the eye. So you want to make sure that everything you have is subdued. And the best way to do this is to take your kit out at nighttime in your backyard and hit it with a flashlight a couple times from each direction. If you get a reflection, fix it. Okay? Noise discipline is exactly what it sounds like. You want to be quiet. This not only includes talking, But this includes your gear. You don't want to have a pocket full of change rattling around. You should be able to put your entire kit on, jump up and down, and it be relatively quiet. And then litter discipline is you don't want to leave marks that you were there in a location. It's kind of that environmental thing of leave no trace. You don't want to leave a bunch of MRE wrappers around, because if somebody's hungry, they know you have food.
Right. Yeah. We're hot on the trail of somebody. Look at this. I can smell those terrible tasting sawdust coconut bars from here. Oh, I can't wait to get some of those. No, but it's absolutely correct. I remember I went to it was a fire spinning festival out here in Southern California. I don't know, a couple hours outside. It was near Joshua Tree, outside of Las Vegas, and it was very similar to Burning Man, where it was leave no trace. You know, so one of the things everybody had to do was to walk through the area that we were at, and I mean, with a fine-tooth comb, foot by foot, complete grids had to be completely cleared of everything. Not a bottle cap, not a penny, not a wrapper, not a single thing could be anywhere. And yeah, you don't want to be sloppy, because you're letting people know. It's like Shawshank Redemption. You could go up at the top of your crappy hotel room and write Justin King was here, you know, right before you hang yourself, because that's essentially what you're doing. If you're writing your name and letting them know, hey, there's people here and they have food or they have supplies or whatever, you're hanging yourself. It's really a stupid thing to do. And I guess as far as the light and the sound, those are things that maybe I could even spend a little bit more time on. I don't know that I've taken my gear out at night and shine flashlights on it. That's a good idea. Have I jumped around in it? I can't say that I have. I should probably do that. You know, so I think those are very good piece of information.
Then the very last thing is, if you're moving, you have to assume that conflict may occur. And there are all kinds of theories about how to win an engagement. I mean, there are books and books and books on it. The best example and the best breakdown I've ever heard came from a guy, Richard Marcinko. Now, to give you some credence as to who this guy is, you've heard of SEAL Team 6? And
Yeah.
Red Cell and all okay. Two of the military's most elite units, he founded both of them.
Wait, he founded?
Yes, this is the guy that founded both of these.
Oh, dude, who is this guy? I need to have him on the show. Jeez, yeah.
Richard Marcinko.
Okay.
And he is a warrior. I mean, it's his entire life, always has been. In fact, the TV show 24, when they needed a real life, badass to base Jack Bauer's actions on, he was the advisor.
Wow. That's Marsenko, if I want to look it up. Is it
Marcinko. Here, easier. Google Rogue Warrior. It's the name of one of his books.
Oh, okay. We'll do that.
And that's so his breakdown is that you need three things to win a firefight, to win an engagement: speed, surprise, and violence of action. What this means is that when you know that it is inevitable, you execute your plan as quickly as possible, and you do it by surprise. This is no time for ethics or even a general sense of humanity. If you can shoot them in the back without them ever knowing you were there, that's so much the better. Okay? And then the final thing is violence of action, and this is the hardest one for people to get. And what that means is, once you start, you do not stop. Plain and simple. You bring as much firepower down as quickly as possible onto them in the most terrifying way possible, and you never break in the offensive. You never give them the opportunity to regroup or get the initiative. As far as the mindset of combat, I mean, we can go through tactics and stuff like that at a later date, but as far as the mindset, that's what you have to keep in mind. The only acceptable outcome is for you to be walking away and then not.
We got a video, several months ago at this point. It was in the garden area, and it was a beetle caught in a spider's web. And we caught it on video, and we kept taping and taping and taping and taping and taping. I think it got to 45 minutes. This spider was you wrap up 2 legs, and then it would go for the head and try to bite, and then it would kick out of something. It went on and on. That beetle had the mindset of, I'll be damned if some stupid little spider's going to catch me. Even though I got myself into a bit of a jam here, I'll be damned if this is going to take me out. And it was the same way with when I played football. It was just, there's nothing you can do to break me. You could not hurt me enough to keep me from destroying you. There's nothing you can do. And it's a military philosophy. It's the mentality of, I am walking away from this. You are not. If 2 men enter, 1 man leaves, like Mel Gibson, what was that, Mad Max? I'm leaving. And how do people that don't pay attention to this, how do they develop that mindset? If they haven't played football, if they haven't been in the military, if they haven't had to, have physical combat with people, can that be taught, or do you need the experience somehow?
Well, I guess psychologically, it's something that it can be taught, but it's easier to a specific 4% of the population. I guess they've done repeated studies, and 4% of the U.S. population, of every population they've studied, are what they call natural-born killers. Everybody else has to learn it. And it's hard because, we're ingrained with, the cowboy in the white hat type of scenario. But in real life, you shoot the bad guy in the back. In real life, you open fire and you keep shooting. I don't know that it's something that can be taught easily. And grasping that philosophy, especially for activists who are normally, we're peaceful people. It's hard for us to accept that this may be a possibility. But it's the reality of the situation. And this advice isn't coming from Justin King. This advice is coming from a guy that served multiple tours in Vietnam, that built, like when you think of badass, you think SEAL Team 6. This is the guy that built it. So you can take the advice of your gun store owner. You can take the advice of, your buddy, whatever you want. But you're not going to get better advice and a better breakdown than from this guy.
You're saying that Chuck Norris wears Richard Marcinko pajamas to bed?
Pretty much. I mean, when it really breaks down, is this guy is like when you read The Jacket or you're watching an action movie and you hear about the guy, he was in Grenada, Panama, Vietnam, he won 2 Bronze Stars.
Right.
Yeah, Marcinko won 4. He is the real life action hero.
And so basically then journalists and activists need to be ready for speed, surprise, and violence of action. Peace being the number one option. But if you find yourself in a life or death situation where it's either kill or be killed, and hopefully everybody does get to avoid that, these things can actually happen. People should be prepared to move with a lot of speed, a lot of surprise, meaning you don't get paralysis through analysis. You don't sit there like a deer in the headlights until they have enough time to notice you. They get a plan, then they come toward you. Now they've totally flipped the tables when you could have had them a second ago. And then the violence of action, it's just absolute brutality. That's why war is hell, and that's why we should work to avoid it.
Right. I mean, there's a breakdown. of it, an in-depth breakdown of that philosophy and some other tactical stuff in an article. What was it called? I believe it's called A Women's Guide to Purchasing a Firearm. Because I'd had a lot of women in my life get some really bad advice. And I think that it's definitely something that men should read, especially the sections on this, because they get advice from people, and it's not always good. So and I just stuck to his philosophy, because there's no way that somebody like me is going to be able to compare with his level of experience. So, I think
you could live 30 more years doing top-notch stuff and still maybe hope to do half of where he's at.
Right. I mean, he is. I mean, he's the pinnacle when it comes to this stuff. So, I mean, because not just did he do it, he developed it.
So it's basically. Are you familiar, John Correa with ASP, Active Self-Protection? Have you met him yet?
I haven't met him, but I've heard about him.
Yeah, he's going to be our guest in the next couple days. We're going to do a segment on the executive actions of President Obama. He's been on the show before. We talk about active self-protection, and I just watched a video today, and I sent him a text. I said, "Hey, let's book this segment. Have you seen this video?" And it was a guy comes into a jewelry store. It was a cell phone store, and then he pulls a gun. He hands him a bag first, then he pulls a gun, and walking around, and the guy attacks him. So the clerk attacks the guy with the gun, and they're wrestling. He gets the gun. But then it was like the whole ending of it, and the guy ran into the back, but he was locked in, so the guy with the gun called the cops. But then the guy in the back ran at the storefront to try to escape right toward the guy with the gun. They're wrestling again. I'm just going, this is like Keystone Cops. Like, why are you continuing to get engaged by this guy? You don't want to keep putting yourself into bad situations. So, I mean, it's always important with what John does on active self-protection is just, and listen, folks, here's how quick it can happen. Nah, sorry, that was my best John imitation. I'll have to work on it. I've never tried it before. But all these different videos, you get 2 or 3 minutes to see, hey, they're waiting in line at Burger King, and then this guy shows up, and then all of a sudden this guy punches this guy, and he takes her purse, and then he stabs this woman, and this is out of Indonesia. Take a look at this closed circuit. He's standing there waiting at the elevator, and it's just like, these things can happen so damn quick anywhere where you're at. These are things you need to be mentally aware of and have your head on a swivel. Look to your left, look to your right, look in the corners, look in the alleys. Are you truly in a good place? If so, do you have mace? Do you have a knife? Do you have a plan in case somebody jumped out of the bushes? You just have to be alert. You have to be prepared. You have to be aware. And, like you said, 4% are natural with this type of stuff. I don't know. Maybe I do these shows to try to maybe, if one person listens to the show, takes one tip away, that's one more than they had yesterday, and that's helpful.
Right. I mean, it's a lot to process, and a lot of this you can't learn through an article, you can't learn over the radio, and that's why we're going to do, the in-person stuff. But even just a little bit, even just basically just grasping the idea that it's okay to cheat in combat, just that could save someone's life. You don't, when you're in times of war, laws are silent, So if you're in that situation, you do what you have to do, and you do it as quickly and as violently as possible. And just because you prefer peace doesn't mean you shouldn't be prepared for war.
To secure peace is to prepare for war. Was it of Wolf of Man from Metallica, the Black Album?
Yeah.
No, but it's the truth. I've told the story many times of the guy that, like I said, the first 2 series, he held me on all 3 plays in the first series. I pulled on my jersey. I played defensive end, and he was holding me. I got back. I'm just stewing on the bench. I'm pissed, and I'm talking to people. And I go back out there, And before I get down on the first snap, I look at him, I go, if you hold me, I'm going to destroy you. The first play, he holds me. I go, all right, that was the only warning. And on the next play, I lined up with, instead of my right hand down, I put my left hand down. And with my right hand, I cocked it back, and I was waiting. And when the ball was snapped, I wound up with a windmill and punched this kid in the gut as hard as I could. He crumpled like a sack of wet potatoes, barely was able to crawl back to the huddle for the next play, and I destroyed him for the rest of the game. But I had to warn him first. I didn't have to, but I chose to. I said, hey, that holding me thing, that's not going to fly here. I'm determining the rules. And I punched him in the gut. Is that a football play? No. Could I have been ejected for it? I don't know. It didn't happen, so it didn't happen. But this guy should not have been holding, and that was happening too, and I wanted to stop that from happening, and I handled it. And I handled it the rest of the game. So I think you might be onto something with that 4%. I don't know that I've ever really heard that number before, but it's just a weird group of people that are willing to go hand-to-hand combat either in sport or in real life, life and death. And you know, the fact that you're basically putting it out there, making it as obvious as possible. Look, remain peaceful as long as you humanly can. Be as prepared as you can, but what's that quote from the Revolutionary War? If do not fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it start today. Something like that. And you know, you just have to go for it. If someone's attacking you, you don't dance with them. You respond with quickness, with speed, with violence of action, with surprise. You just have to react to it, because sitting there like a deer in headlights, you're just going to get run over. I think that's so crucial. You know, it's I would take his advice. Yeah, I want to look that one up. What'd you say? Richard Marcinko, and what's the name of the book? Rogue Warrior.
Rogue Warrior.
Yeah,
now he wrote some fiction books that are called like Rogue Warrior 2 or something like that.
Gotcha.
But the original Rogue Warrior is the autobiography, and it was written with a guy, John Wiseman, and it's very it's in depth. It carries from as much as he could disclose.
Right.
Like 10 years ago.
I wonder how many revisions that went under.
Oh well, luckily he'd been busted and wound up in federal prison for a short time. So I don't think he really cared much about his clearance. So there's a lot of information in there that probably shouldn't have been.
Interesting.
But it carries from, you know, him growing up through his time in Vietnam, through building SEAL Team 6. And that's, I definitely think that it's one of the, as far as grasping the mindset of a warrior, I think it's one of the best modern books written, because he doesn't pull any punches with it. I mean, it is the most profanity-laden book I've ever written. I mean, you know, the guy was a Navy chief before he became an officer, so he literally cusses like a sailor. But he
quite literally cusses like a sailor.
Right, and he comes off as kind of a knuckle dragger, but at the same time, everybody needs to remember this guy also. He continued his education. He's got a master's. He speaks half a dozen languages. He's very disarming in person, because you see him and you're like, wow, this guy is a thug. And then you talk to him, and you realize he's a very bright guy. So if you have to read a book to try to grasp the mindset of somebody that's really done it, and done it for extended periods of time, that would be my recommendation.
All right. It's on my list. I circled it. Written with John Wiseman. He built SEAL Team 6. Richard Marcinko. I feel like this has been a wonderful infomercial. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, because this is what it's about, though. Like I was saying earlier, if there's certain websites we like, certain authors we like, certain whatever, it's like when you say, hey, check out this new band. They're really sweet. I don't know if you heard about them yet, but man, you know, you like passing this type of stuff on. Some people like to do it. Some people don't pay attention, whatever, but I think we know the type of people we are. So then aside from those three things, Justin King of Fifth Column News, speed, surprise, and violence of action, Justin King. Other than those three things, the speed, surprise, violence of action, what's the final parting shot that people need to know? That's an enormous thing that people, if they haven't been in those battle situations, if people take nothing away from this show other than speed, surprise, violence of action, I couldn't agree with you anymore. What else would you say to people? What other pieces of advice do you have?
Well, I mean, I think that and the idea, the concept that knowledge weighs nothing. You know, you can get all the gear in the world and try to carry it all, or you can learn, you know, some more advanced tactics. So that's, you know, I would say to continue educating yourself on these topics, because it's one of those things that you don't know you need it until you need it, and by then it's too late. You know.
Yeah.
Once this starts, you're not going to Barnes and Noble.
That's a good point. Now, I mean, are you saying that maybe they should get the SAS Pocket Guide? Would you say that they need, like, what are some good resource manuals that you recommend?
Speaking of an infomercial, I can plug one more article. There's a Tradecraft article that it's titled "The Most Comprehensive List of Military Manuals" or something along those lines. And it is a list of 100 military manuals, free to download. And it covers everything from basic patrolling to IEDs. It's something that makes the Anarchist Cookbook look like something from Betty Crocker.
Betty Crocker.
We put it together when Dianne Feinstein said that she wanted to get the Anarchist Cookbook off the internet. So we're like, okay, well, here's a replacement.
And so these are what you click. Let's see. I'm going to read this. I have it pulled up here off of Fifth Column News. Tradecraft, the most comprehensive list of useful military training materials. Oftentimes, people who... Oh, sorry. It's covered up by your little Twitter thing there. Oftentimes, people who want to have more thorough training in order to better protect themselves from harm or to survive a disaster simply do not know where to find the information they need. Instead, they find themselves trusting less than accurate information or sifting through book after book attempting to find the information they know is out there somewhere. Most of the time, people overlook the best possible source of information on the skills necessary to survive in bad situations, conduct military operations, or simply understand history better. The Department of Defense. Those that are aware of this as a source are painfully aware that most are cataloged based on an FM or TM number and that the numbers have very little rhyme or reason. The fifth column has put together a list of field manuals and technical manuals that are most needed and sought after. When we broke the list down into easy-to-understand subcategories, we then located where each manual is available online. Some of these manuals date back 50 years. I think you spelled Fiddy, F-I-D-D-Y. I just added that. I don't know why. It had to be 50. 50 years! Some are this year's edition. The value in learning tactics from a bygone area is that today's opposition will not have been trained to counter them. Very good point. The tactics of war, like many things, are cyclical. None of this information is classified. Some of it could cause severe injury to the user or others. This is provided as research material only. And it's there: survival, combat skills of the soldier, first aid, special forces medical handbook, map reading and land navigation, chemical accident contamination control, treatment of biological warfare casualties, field... I could probably do this nonstop with only taking, I don't know, about 20 breaths, but I'm going to stop. This is a very comprehensive list here, and you say people just print them out? How heavy would this be?
Yeah.
Would it be like Obamacare by the time you're done printing this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not too bad given the fact that all of these were written for your average 18-year-old to be able to understand.
Oh, okay.
It's written for guys that are just coming out of basic training in most cases. So what I would recommend is that you can download them and print them if you want. You can download them, put them on a disc. My advice is to actually go ahead and read them. Just read one a week or something like that, or one every couple of days, and go through them. And you can pick and start where you want. I think one of the more I think the most clicked on link is the one about Viet Cong booby traps, because it's one of those things that now that everybody's used to dealing with modern IEDs, nobody even has a clue what the old stuff looks like. So I think people, for some reason, are very interested in that, which makes me a little nervous, but whatever. And, yeah.
Knowledge is an inanimate object, Justin. Knowledge is inanimate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wonder, like, are these the good guys getting all the info, or are there a lot of bad guys gathering it? But either way, the point is, you know, and we did a show yesterday about the stock market and about North Korea and about this and about that and about this gun control, executive orders, and this woman left this comment, and I can't believe you two are laughing at the president, and I'm glad you think it's funny that a defenseless child got murdered. I replied back, I'm like, lady, what in the world are you talking about? I go, I don't know what world you live in where a monster can go ahead and kill a little girl, and that's a good thing that's laughed at and celebrated. If you didn't listen to my show and just read a headline or only listened for 10 minutes, or I don't know what the hell you're thinking, but I would rather put a bullet into the skull of a madman than see a single innocent person butchered. I don't want it to happen to me. I don't want it to happen to my family or my loved ones. I would rather stop evil and confront it where it happens to be. You know, and my basic reply to this woman, I just couldn't believe it. And I'm like, there is no fairy tale land where self-defense is something that, I'll get to it if I get to it. It's not that important. It's important every single day in every single scenario where people are. And I don't know, maybe some people are just ignorance is bliss to them. Or maybe it's a little more sinister and they like spreading laziness around. I don't know. I don't know which one it is, but I don't want to be that type of person, I can tell you that.
Well, I think a lot of people have a hard time grasping the realities of it. I think a lot of people don't want to think about it. And that's completely understandable. Like, I mean, it's horrible. You know? So the fact that some people would rather look the other way, I mean, that's the diffusion of responsibility. You know, they assume that, you know, the police or the government or whomever will take care of it. Somebody else will shoulder the burden because for, you know, a long time in American history, that's the way it's been. But it won't always be that way.
Yeah. It's been that way for a while, and people are very used to it. And it's kind of funny you bring that up because it reminds me of this thing that I said with the Cleveland. I did a show, The Unhappy Hour. What was it, 2 days ago now? And talking about the Cleveland Browns. They fired the general manager. They fired the head coach. They do this every 2-3 years. It's just pathetic. The organization can't get it together. And so now they put like a lawyer in charge. They hired a baseball guy to oversee the operations. The owner's a truck stop tycoon. And there were rumors that last season they tried to make a trade, the Broncos did, for Pro Bowl and Hall of Fame left tackle Joe Thomas, but they didn't know who was in charge of the organization. Did the GM have the power to trade? Was it the owner? Was it the special assistant? Was it the head coach? And this is the thing, what you were saying, it applies to it. This one's called Everybody, Somebody, Anybody, and Nobody. This is a little story about 4 people named Everybody, Somebody, Anybody, and Nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought that anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. And I think it's the same with politics, a totally screwed up professional football team, or a lot of important day-to-day things. A lot of finger-pointing, Justin. A lot of finger-pointing and very few, like you said, maybe as few as 4% of people that are naturally ready to just step up and handle these things. And a lot of other people just might make excuses and say, hey, that's everybody's job. I'm not doing it. Somebody's going to do it. Anybody can do it. It ain't going to be me. You know? So
I do. I think that's the way a lot of people look at it.
And I like what you have here on Tradecraft. I think it's something that wait, how do I do this? I think this is something that everybody can do. Somebody can take the opportunity. Nobody should avoid this page. Tradecraft down there in the most comprehensive list of useful military training materials. You're very right. My buddy, I introed the show that helped get this website going, got this channel going. Sean Flynn, who passed away in a motorcycle crash, he used to say he just really used to be an advocate about knowledge. About you said something a few minutes ago, Justin, about knowledge doesn't weigh anything. You know, and when it comes down to fancy gear and this and that and all these toys and bags and whistles and guns and do you know what you're supposed to do? And then when you determine what's going on, can you move with speed? Can you move with surprise and with a violence of action? So, you know, it's crucially important. It's crucially important. So, you know, I love what you guys do here on this particular topic, because there's nobody in this country that's immune to, you know, hey, let's say you get stuck in a snowstorm and you're 40 miles away from home and your car won't start and you're off on a side road and nobody comes by for a while and your cell phone isn't working. What do? You know, it's just, it's not torture to think of the worst case scenarios and have a plan. I think it's only smart. I think it's our responsibility to have a worst case scenario plan of action in order. So definitely these materials here on Tradecraft, the comprehensive list of useful military training materials, people should definitely check out. And I did just, I was trying to tweet it out, but I was on a different page. I'll do that now. But anyway, other than that, Justin, I mean, like I said, we've gone for a very long time and we've still just scratched the surface. I say this every time. Do you have any other final points that you wanted to throw in on this? Something else that's crucial for people to realize? I think I interrupted you about 20 minutes ago when you said that activists were not really prepared for things to get this brutal, and that, you know, you need to kind of shake them up and realize you need to at least have the skill set and hope that you never need it. I don't know how you want to put a bow on this present.
Well, I think that's it. I mean, it is what it is, and it's one of those things where at the end of the day, if things go bad, if those people that are not peaceful at their heart aren't trained and prepared for violence, the people that take over and win afterward are violent. Those will be the winner.
Say that one more time. If you say that one more time, let that sink in. That is such a crucial point.
If people that aren't peaceful at heart aren't trained and prepared for this, the people that win after this type of thing happens, and the people that come to power, are going to be the most brutal and the most violent of the people involved.
Look at ISIS, you could say. Syria, Libya, Iraq.
Yeah, it's up to the people that want peace and want liberty and want freedom to be prepared to defend that. So, I mean, we can talk about all the peaceful methods all the time, but at some point in the future, violence may become necessary. And without that knowledge base, there's not a lot that we can do. We have to be prepared for it.
Do you think we're ahead of the curve or behind the curve, and we got a lot of catching up to do as a nation?
I think that the most important thing that we can do right now is for people to realize that the activists on the right and the activists on the left of this little right-left paradigm that everybody seems to believe in are a whole lot closer together than the media would have you believe. And because the people on the right are typically those capable of, of these type of things. And if alliance can be built if we can set aside the silly ideology, because with both sides, they just want to be left alone. If we can set that aside and realize where the actual threat is, we'll be a lot better off. I think that needs to be the number one priority. But
I saw that meme floating around today. You know, if you could just get rid of the Al Sharptons and the Jesse Jacksons from the Black Lives Matter movement, those types of rabble rousers, the Barack Obamas and Eric Holders that want to divide everybody by race. If you could get rid of some of those crazy KKK or skinhead idiots over on the right, you know, whether it's Bundy Ranch or whatever. Although I didn't find any of those people out at that thing, so I don't know how many of those really exist from my personal experience. But kick the crazies out. 90% of the people on both sides of these things are just saying, hey, I've had enough. I'm done with all of this. I'm opting out, and there's nothing you can do about it because I'm done. I'm not going to play your games anymore, and I'm not going to get sucked into your trap. But hey, Justin, we're out of time, man. Give everybody the info on how they can donate to the Fifth Column News, which is something that I recommend people do.
#FundTheFifth, spelled out. And you can go to thefifthcolumnnews.com or find us on Facebook or Twitter.
Excellent. Justin, thank you so much for your time, man. I got a hunch maybe in a month or two we're going to do this again, and we're going to cover bugging out and preparedness, and we're going to cover another 2.5 hours of really important information for people to absorb. But hey, thank you so much for your time, and good luck with the fundraising, all right?
Thank you. You guys have a good day.
All right, take care, Justin. And for everybody out there in the TNAM radio network, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you. I love you. Check us out. Subscribe, youtube.com/The New American Media. Our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. On Twitter at American_media_. And do a search on Facebook for The New American Media with spaces in between and like the page. So, get ready. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. That's it. Talk to you soon.
Hi, everybody. You're listening to Agree to Disagree with Brian Engelman, and this is John B. Wells reminding you that not only is Brian Engelman a cool guy, and not only is the NewAmericanMedia.com a very cool platform, but here's a cool idea for you, too. Are you alone? Not really. Do you like dogs? Do you like cats? You do. Of course you do. Everybody does. One or the other, maybe even both. You know, there are a lot of dogs and cats that are at shelters right now, and if somebody doesn't take them home, they're going to wind up euthanized. That's a nice way of saying they're going to be killed because there's simply not enough room. I guarantee it, the best dogs and the best cats, the best pets come from shelters. There's something about dogs and cats. They know. They know where they are. You walk through one of them, and certainly at least one is going to look at you and go, I wish you'd take me home. I'm in hell. Please take me out of here. It'll be the best thing that you ever did for your soul. You'll feel good about it. And not only that, but you have a friend for life. Doesn't matter if you got money, you don't have money. Well, it doesn't make any difference to a dog or cat. All they need is the sound of your voice and maybe even the stroke of your hand, and they're fine. Maybe a little food every once in a while. The sweetest sound that those pets ever hear is your voice. Think it over and adopt a cat or a dog from a local shelter today. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did.